Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Every working person in America knows that higher wages are better for them and for their families than low wages. Hundreds of economists agree. The National Employment Law Project's Christine Owens says the battle over raising the minimum wage is a fight to maintain basic standards and a strong wage floor at the bottom of our economy.
The minimum wage is our fundamental workplace standard. It is the standard that is intended to ensure that someone who gets up and goes to work can earn a decent living.
Owens says more than 28 million people would benefit from raising the minimum wage, but she says the impact of the minimum wage goes well beyond those people to the economy in general. She says low wages are a drag on demand, which hurts job creation. Owens says low wages contribute to growing inequality that can subvert democracy and destabilize the nation. Owens says raising the minimum wage and stopping its erosion from inflation would strengthen the American economy.
It is about making sure that the people who are working in these jobs that sort of line the bottom of the labor market will earn a decent living. But it is also about making sure that the wages in these jobs will lift up wages across the board. And the more we allow the minimum wage to deteriorate and to lose value, the more that pulls down wages across the board for all workers.
The Union for Mine Workers killed in the Turkish city of Soma say it's intolerable that mine workers in Turkey are denied their basic human right to work in an environment that guarantees their safety. The Mine Workers Union of Turkey is an affiliate of Industrial. Industrial says Turkey's record on mine safety is poor, and Industrial calls mine workers' deaths carnage. Industrial is calling on Turkey to ratify the International Labor Organization Convention 176 to create much safer working conditions in mines. Turkey has the worst mine safety record in Europe and third worst in the world. The National Labor Relations Board is ordering Boeing to stop illegal intimidation tactics against union members. Boeing systematically photographed and videotaped unionized engineers near Seattle and in Portland, Oregon. The actions are unfair labor practices. The Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace filed the unfair labor practices complaint against Boeing. Boeing has also been ordered to post within 2 weeks a notice saying employees are entitled to join a union and participate in union activities, and that Boeing won't videotape, photograph, or watch union activities. Boeing is evaluating whether to appeal. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
This town gonna be here long after I'm gone. East side, west side, people don't surrender. They've been down, but they still rock on. Oh, and this time is my time. All right, love or hate, it don't matter. So I'm gonna stand and fight. This time is my time. She got her ups and downs, but love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause this is my time.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks for being here tonight on the big program. Oh, lots of things to talk about, lots of things to get to. It's election day. Well, we're getting there, right? Tomorrow morning. Everybody going to wake up bright and early, put it on the calendar. It's the night before election day. All through the House, the decision should be made. Where is our voting place? We should know that already, and who we're voting for. Tonight on the program, I'm going to talk to one of the lieutenant governor candidates. Brad Kaplinski will be here making the last push to, hey, vote for me, and here's why. We'll talk with Brad, and also Jim Byrne, chairman of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, going to be here. Kind of just saying, what I think the Democrats have been saying, got to get out and vote. After all, a number of organizations fought pretty hard to make sure that the barriers between voters and their ballot box were not erected, thanks to our Republican friends. And I keep saying, this is the time that you make those folks pay. All of the people who came up with this ill-conceived idea of how we put, just a little barrier. And for what reason?
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania.
Done. Wow. You got to love that. Voter ID, done. All done. And why was it? Well, power, control. So we're going to talk about that. Also a little bit about manufacturing. A big rally today in Pittsburgh to save steel. I think we should be saving all of our manufacturing. A lot of things to talk about. And the manufacturing part of this, and kind of where I was going to open up tonight, because tonight it was 12 years ago tonight, and at heart, as any parent I've talked to will tell you, man, it just seems like a blink of an eye. It was 12 years ago today that I became a parent, my daughter's 12th birthday. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And it just goes, we brought home this tiny child, this tiny baby. And, we had no idea what was in store for us. Now, look, my daughter and I sat down, we had this long conversation today, because she came home and, she's freaked out because they watch CNN Kids News on TV at school, which I never got to watch TV at school. But they're watching this CNN Kids TV, and my daughter comes home. World War III's coming, Dad. And I'm going, well, no, I wouldn't plan on that just yet, honey. And we began this whole conversation, remembering when I was 12, because when I was 12, we were a heartbeat away from going into Iran, and it was a very real. If you remember the hostage crisis, you remember I think Terry Anderson and the other 51, there were 52 hostages taken, held for 444 days. Very interesting. I'm not conspiratorial. I say that enough. Just interesting how when Reagan put his hand on the Bible, the hostages were miraculously released. I'm not saying that the Bush-Reagan camp had anything to do with their holding. I'll leave that to other people who have said that. But it just seemed interesting to me. And, we were talking about, my daughter and I were talking about, when I was her age, how things were. And, there was the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and we had all of these places, much like what's going on in Ukraine. These things were going on. And you can't, don't get caught up in all the fervor. Don't get caught up in all of the pointing fingers. Step back, take a longer view. And I told her World War III is not coming. But there's a lot of crisis. There are a lot of things to worry about. Manufacturing being one of those. And we went into talking about, where are the jobs? You want to talk about real crisis for my daughter's generation? Jobs are going to be one of them. Trade policy going to be another one. Manufacturing, if we're going to be a war society. If we're worried about World War III being around the corner, if we're scaring the hell out of our children. Shouldn't we be manufacturing all of those things? Shouldn't we be making those? And, we had this, because I was 35 when my daughter was born, and I thought I was ready. I cannot imagine had I had a child at 18, 19, or heaven forbid 15 or 16. But had I been part of creating a child at that, I have no idea what life would have been like. And because at 35, I thought I was ready. And it's been a miraculous, amazing journey to this point. Watching this soon-to-be human, this soon-to-be citizen, this soon-to-be adult, this growing, blossoming young lady, mature right before my very eyes, and it's been an amazing thing to be able to watch. And I don't think I would have appreciated that being younger. I think the fact that I am a little bit older, it gives me a little time to maybe to sit and look at things through a different perspective than I would have had I been 20 on a treadmill just trying to make it to next week. Now, to be honest, I would have been I wouldn't have the aches and pains that I have now running to keep up with them. When I was a kid, snap, crackle, and pop was something you had for breakfast when I was a kid. It wasn't the sounds that your body makes, and mine makes enough of them. But it's just one of those things that I'm on her, and I've never talked about it in the past, and I got such a positive response because I never think I always think nobody really wants to know about me personally, know about my family or any of that, and I got such an enormous response from people that I thought I would share some of this. And the reality is, and I think we all go through, these are shared things that we all, I think, share together. The fact that when we have children who do blossom before, it's a pretty special thing. It's pretty amazing as far as I'm concerned. And I've been very lucky to be able to be part of it and to be able to not have to be on the treadmill, even though I do work 1 million hours a week. It's just an amazing thing. The question then becomes, what kind of a country do I leave her? What's the vision for the future? Can we still do big things in this country? Last week I saw a story that China wanted to build a high-speed train from China to the U.S. To go through China, through Russia, through the Bering Straits to Alaska, Alaska to Canada, Canada into the U.S. And, maybe they can do it, maybe they can't. I mean, there was some speculation that they can. The technology's there. The Bering Straits, a little chilly. I don't know how you're going to get through that water. I think it's like 20-some miles long, 25 miles long. Frigid water, 160-some feet deep, possibly. But how are you going to get those trains? I know they claim they can do it. The engineering is there, the capability we have, but the will. I'm going. Why? Why would you want a train to go from China to the U.S. other than cheaper labor? Because it's not going to. I doubt it's going to be a freight rail. It's going to be a passenger rail. So why? And the first thing that I start thinking of is moving cheaper workers from China to the U.S. But the thing that caught me is it's this thinking big ideas. And right now it's the Chinese who are thinking big ideas. They're the ones who are saying, we can change the world. We can change things. Here in the U.S., it seems we can't even change a light bulb in Congress. I mean, there's got to be, meetings and hearings and filibusters, and of course, you got to weigh in with all of the euphemistically named front groups. All the think tanks have to weigh in, and the Koch brothers have to spend some money, and all of this stuff has to go on before common sense seems to take hold. And I kind of just want to step back and go, there's some things we should be thinking about outside of all of this. And that's, that idea that, my kids, are they going to have that? When I was a kid, I thought about space. I thought about big concepts. The ideas of being able to, to talk on the telephone and see somebody on the other end. And the technology then came to the, big ideas going to the moon, all of this different stuff that we as a nation have done. Can we still do this, given what's gone on here in the last several years? Is it possible? And I think that only comes when we start to have some common ground. And one of those things, as I was talking to my daughter today, as she's fretting over, oh my gosh, World War III is coming, is looking at our manufacturing and our military-industrial complex and going, well, at least we should make this stuff here, right? Because I started thinking about all of the things that we don't make. Those smart bombs? Well, we need chips to make the smart bomb smart. And where do we get those? China. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff that really needs to be turned around, and mighty quick. So in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the big rally today in Pittsburgh, and there were a large number of people out saying, you know what? Let's start talking about U.S. manufacturing and saving this particular type of a steel tube that is being used for the drilling. Remember that trade deal? They told us, hey, everything's going to be fine. Not so much. So we're going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Rick Smith Show.
There isn't anyone immune from globalization. In fact, the confluence of greed and geography blends seamlessly over all of humanity. As the American workforce has become more sophisticated and smart, corporations have become less agreeable. Of course, there were numerous road signs that led to globalization, and at this point, somewhat improbable that any single cause could be raised from the economic wreckage it has created. However, 1976 may have been a high watermark for the American economy, where a change in the tax code emboldened corporations to move more operations overseas. Where these gutless entrepreneurs once shuttered factories in the Northeast and moved them to southern localities, they were now served up by the U.S. Congress, a world plate where even to their insatiable greed, the possibilities seemed limitless. The assault on American workers continued in the 1980s when the Reagan administration further retooled the tax code to allow foreign investors to set up American subsidiaries, thereby artfully managing the exodus of U.S.-based corporations. The unseemly alliance between Congress and corporations offers little solace to workers, but does shine a perpetual light on the misgivings of unregulated money flowing into the pockets of greedy politicians. Unions, while greatly weakened over the last 2 decades, continue to mount credible defenses, proposing balance, equity, and fairness for workers over the broader brush of Congress that would have us believe that globalization can regulate itself. This Rick Smith Show Labor History Minute is brought to you by a grant from the Labor Education Center at IUP. For more information, go to www.thericksmithshow.com.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I have some great news. You can now get the Rick Smith Show podcast on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Palm on demand and on the go. Get your class war to go by downloading the Stitcher app on your smartphone by going to Stitcher.com and search for The Rick Smith Show, or go to our website at thericksmithshow.com and click on our Stitcher button. Together we can and we will rebuild a prosperous working class and leave opportunity for our children.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
Rebuilding America. The Rick Smith Show.
Come tumbling down the walls. Come crumbling the walls. Come tumbling down.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. James sent me an email during the break, caught my attention. He goes, did you ever think, Rick, that this could be another way to lower wages and by further hooking up desperate workers in China to bring here to the U.S.? Yeah, James, thought of that. And, you know, it's one of those things that when you talk about bringing a train line from China to the U.S., 2 things pop into my mind. A, cheap labor first, but B, it's that bigger concept. Doing really big things, and then the manufacturing part of it, getting people to work. There's we used to think that way, and I'd love it if we went back to having some big ideas. And then, oh, by the way, manufacturing the stuff here, just a thought. Anyway, today, huge rally out in Pittsburgh. A large number of folks out saying, hey, you know what? These bad trade deals, maybe we should enforce some of the rules that are in it so that we don't continue to lose jobs by seeing imports into this country being dumped and us losing jobs over it, which about damn time. That's why I have asked Scott Paul. He's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, to come talk with us. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, great to be with you tonight.
You know, I remember when the president, who I voted for twice, told me that, in fact, I sat 20 feet for him when he said, "You can trust me on trade deals. I'm not going to sign Colombia, not going to sign Korea yet. Sign Colombia, sign Korea, sign Panama." We were told we're going to lose jobs. We've lost a ton of jobs.
We have. We have unfortunately gone back to the same old when it comes to trade. And yeah, I think that we're probably both in the same position here, where candidate Obama sounded pretty darn good on trade, but President Obama hasn't quite lived up to that. I mean, he's done some trade enforcement actions that have been valuable with regard to tires, some clean energy products, and some other lines of steel. But yeah, the negotiating the agreements, he's not. I don't think he's stood out as being a whole lot different from where President Bush or President Clinton were on that. And we got this big test coming up. You referred to the rally, but we have this big test on pipe and tube that's used in our energy infrastructure coming up, and whether we're going to be making it here, whether we're going to be making it in South Korea.
When you say we're going to be making it in South Korea, what does that mean?
Well, this pipe's going to be made somewhere, because it's going into the natural gas and oil infrastructure in the United States, which as you know is growing.
Right. So I understand that.
Yeah, you got it. So the only question is, where's it going to come from? And it makes a lot of sense to source this pipe and tube from a local steel mill.
Absolutely.
They're very good at it. They actually should have a comparative advantage, but unfortunately, trade is a growth strategy in some other countries. China is one. We actually the government slapped tariffs on Chinese pipe and tube about 4 or 5 years ago, which helped enormously. But then the South Korean companies got into the market. They're dumping steel, and the Commerce Department, unfortunately, looked at it in February, said, well, maybe South Korea deserves a pass on this. They have a chance to change their mind in July, and we're making sure that our voices are heard on that they look at all the evidence and that they make the right choice here.
So that's the reason for the rally today, and others that you have planned coming up in the near future.
Yeah, you got it. We've already been. We were in Granite City, Illinois. Great middle class city, just outside of St. Louis. We were in Lorain, Ohio, to kick things off a few weeks ago. We were in Pittsburgh earlier today. We're going to be in Lone Star, Texas, Fairfield, Alabama, and up on the Iron Range in Minnesota before the end of June, to try to show folks that this is an issue that has a national impact, and that we have a lot of great workers, and many of them are steel workers in the union who can make this product, who can do a good job if we have that level playing field.
Because the reason I asked, when you said we, I look at our trade deals, and I'm trying to figure out, when our negotiators sit down and negotiate these trade deals, whose interest are they negotiating? Because just about everybody I've ever talked to, when you talk about trade, they all say, well, our negotiators are horrible. And I said, well, there's got to be someone who's benefiting from this. So my thought, when you said we are making it, my thought was there's an American company that's either going to make it in South Korea or make it here. But if they can dump it and they can do cheaply over there, we just lose out again.
We do, and I to your point, you made me think of something that Jack Shea and Rick Bloomingdale, Jack Shea from the Allegheny
Central Labor Council,
and of course Rick Bloomingdale with the state AFL-CIO, leader of the state AFL-CIO, said, you know what? If you had labor negotiators in charge of these trade deals, they wouldn't end up being so terrible. We'd actually have a good deal. And I'll have to say that wasn't the first time I heard that. The first time I actually heard that was probably 10 years ago on Capitol Hill, and it was a conservative Republican member of Congress who said the very same thing. He said, if we had labor negotiators doing our trade deals, they'd look a whole lot better than they right now, because they would drive a hard bargain. They would make sure that they were enforceable and that they were fair as well. And unfortunately, the folks negotiating our trade agreements today, they may be really smart, but they're not looking out for the right set of concerns here. You're right about that, Rick.
Yeah, because I always wonder whose concerns, because these have got to be smart people. It's just whose interests are they pursuing? Because it's not mine. It's not average everyday working people. Because I think this is an issue that unites across party lines and across business interests even. Because I saw U.S. Steel today tweeted out that it was a great event.
They sure did. I mean, and this is something where the company, the union, are walking hand in hand. Last week, there was a letter sent by 57 United States senators, and 14 of them were Republicans. So you had, Jeff Sessions from Alabama, who is a true conservative. Sherrod Brown from Ohio, leading up that letter along with Rob Portman. So it really was a bipartisan effort, and it's something, because I think from the conservative Republican perspective, it's like, look, this is supposed to be the free market, and we don't want to see anything distorting that. So that, I think that's that point of view, and that makes a lot of sense from that perspective. And from our perspective, where there is also this I think point of view that these trade agreements don't work very well. It's like, you got to stand up for workers now. Now is the time to do it. And it's pretty clear that they're not getting a fair deal.
Yeah, because I've always said, Scott, that what should be in these trade agreements are bringing labor standards up, not this concept of least restrictive trade barrier, not this idea that who's willing to do things cheapest or slit their neighbors' throats for the job. We should be raising standards for everybody. At least that's how it was sold to us back in the 90s.
Well, you got it, and unfortunately, it's become a race to the bottom. The labor and environmental standards, there's lots of great language in there about core ILO standards and how important they are, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of talk. There's nothing that can be done about it. You can't really slap big tariffs on a country. You can't withdraw their benefits. There's not a whole lot that you can do. Whereas if there's an intellectual property violation, God forbid, or something like that, there can be much more aggressive intervention. And just to answer the question about who these deals are for, I mean, if you asked me in a nutshell, I would say primarily for Wall Street. I mean, it is the opening up financial services markets overseas for U.S. banks to get into. And then obviously their financing interests. I mean, they're going to make more money the more investment and production platforms they have around the world. So it is it's worked particularly well for them. I don't think it's worked well at all for most of the rest of the economy in the United States.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Here with Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Lots of great information there. You can get there from thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Scott's name. It'll take you right there. Today my daughter came home all freaked out. World War III's happening, and we're not ready because Russia's gone into Ukraine and all this stuff that evidently they were talking about. And my mind immediately goes, okay, well, we started having this conversation, and I said, one of the things we have to worry about is manufacturing. Because we live in the area, home of the Army War College. And we start talking this out, and she goes, well, do we make all this stuff? And I said, well, sadly, not enough of it. In fact, I've got a huge book in my bedroom that I got from you guys over at the Alliance of American Manufacturing of all of the things that we don't make for our military. Why is that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you have that book, Rick. It is it's a good substitute for Ambien if you're having challenges getting to sleep at night.
No, it actually makes me angry and keeps me awake. Thanks for that one.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to provoke the emotional response at night. But seriously, it's 300 pages that is solid research about a lot of this stuff. That is going into our defense systems and our critical materials that we are unfortunately sourcing from overseas because we either lack the domestic production or the choice has been made to offshore this work, and rare earth minerals. I mean, the stuff that goes into night vision goggles that our special forces use to take out Osama bin Laden. It's called lanthanum, and it's sourced from China because we're not We're not producing it here anymore. Everything from things as basic as fasteners, which obviously are critically important, to enriched uranium. And we get a lot of that from Russia. So we have major challenges. And this is kind of the, when you take outsourcing to its extreme, this is the consequence. Because people say, well, it's fine if we get our clothes from overseas because we'll still make our steel here, or it's fine if we get X from overseas because we'll still make Y here. But when you get to the point and you take a look and you discover that many of our major weapon systems are very dependent on parts from China in particular,
yep.
You got to wake up, which is what that report does.
And that's the reason I brought my daughter into this, who came home with this, this tale of, we're going to World War III. If we're going to World War III, we just can't ask China, hey, can we have some of those chips that make our smart bombs smart, or some of the magnets that help the cruise missile get to where it's supposed to go? Can you spare a couple? I don't think during a time of war we're gonna get any of that stuff.
Yeah, and it certainly complicates, like the folks at Carlisle who are kind of wargaming all of this, like how this works. It really limits your options if you lack the manufacturing capacity to do something, and you're dependent on a foreign supply, particularly from what I would call an unreliable source that is not necessarily going to be there for you all the time, because it goes into every calculation then. Well, do we do a blockade, or do we really step up for Taiwan or Japan, or do we let this aggression stand, or how do we, to your point, if there is a shooting war, how long it can it be sustained, and how large can it be?
Yeah. And even if it's not a shooting war, even when you start talking about the chips that go into things, we don't even produce those. And my problem is, these aren't things that you can just overnight go, okay, tomorrow we're going to start making this stuff.
No, you got to rebuild the whole ecosystem. Just like with a wetland that disappeared. It's like if you plant a tree, it's not going to come back overnight. It's going to take some time to regenerate, and it's not like you snap your fingers and you're going to be able to make that quantity or quality of chips again, silicon chips or semiconductors. It's going to take a lot of time. And it's not just you saying this. It's not just me saying this. I mean, that report was written by a retired Army general. And it's not just him. Even the folks at Harvard Business School, Willie Shih and Gary Pisano wrote an article a couple of years ago about how America is losing out because we're not making a lot of this stuff. Batteries was a great example. I mean, we stopped making toys. The toys started needing batteries. All of that stuff was made in Asia. The latest, greatest battery research then shifted to Asia. And so when we're trying to look for fuel cells for our automobiles, for these electric vehicles, the first round, where'd they come from? Overseas. They came from Asia, precisely for that reason. And it's going to take a while to grow it back.
Because one of the things that bothers me, and this is my last line of questioning for you, one of the things that bothers me is, I saw this train idea that the Chinese want to build a train from China to the U.S. And, in the opening, I'm like, we used to think big ideas, and it's the Chinese who are thinking these big ideas. And I think a part of this is because we've lost that manufacturing capacity. We've lost that thinking, how do we use this for the next level? And we're starting to lose that. How do we get this back? How do we bring manufacturing back? How do we rebuild that culture of entrepreneurship, of innovation, of invention, to where, some guy in his garage who, maybe worked for a clothing factory figures out how to use that machine to put chips together for Silicon Valley. How do we bring that back?
Yeah, Rick, you're absolutely right, because the new generation of these innovators, of these inventors, of these fabulous minds, they come up with a lot of great stuff, and then the folks who give them the venture capital say, well, you're going to make it in Asia because you sure aren't going to make it here. I do see some outliers now, and some folks who are insisting on trying to make products in the United States, from consumer products to stuff that's more high-tech. That gives me a little optimism, and perhaps it is that pioneering spirit, Rick, because making something in the United States probably seems so novel to these folks that they want to try it. And as you know, if there's one thing that Americans like, it's a challenge. So in a way, that gives me a bit of hope. But on the broader scale, look, we need to rebuild our infrastructure. You need resources to do that. You need imagination, but you need resources, and we need a Congress that's going to give us those resources.
Yeah, we need visionary statesmen. We don't need partisan bickering.
You got it. I mean, you never build a road that way. And I don't want to do it the Chinese way either, which is that you pave over everything and then you ask questions later. But there was a time when we came together to do the interstate highway system in the 50s, the space program, winning the Cold War, lots of other challenges that we were able to come together on a bipartisan way and solve it, and we have to have the same mindset again. I think you're right.
Yeah, but again, it comes back down to my visionary leadership in the White House and in Congress, and also bringing back manufacturing and giving people like my grandfather, who didn't get past the 8th grade, an opportunity to tinker and develop. He developed a small part for one of the tanks after World War II, and because he was thinking the manufacturing job he was doing, he was thinking outside the box. Hey, how can we do this better? And that went across the nation.
Yeah, he's a hero, and the folks that are doing that today are heroes, and that's how they need to be viewed, instead of saying, well, if you're not going to go to college, maybe here's something for you to think about. It's got to be, this is a valuable, noble line of work where you can do something with your mind and your hands, and you can make a difference for our country, and we really do have to give opportunities for young men and women who want to do that. And look, it's a core competency of the United States. We know how to do this, right? I mean, we know how to do this. We just need the political will. We need the right policies. And you're right. We need that leadership that has that big idea to try to get it done.
Scott, always great talking to you. I appreciate you taking time for us. Congratulations on the big rally. I look forward to seeing what you guys do as you move across the country and push this issue to save our tubular steel industry.
You bet, Rick. Great to be with you, and thanks for everything you do for the working men and women around the country.
Thanks so much, Scott. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion. In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, no, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they were pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Every now and then I visit an elementary school. Talking with children is a pretty good idea, I think. They ask questions we don't think about, and they ask them very directly. Recently, a little girl wanted to know, what's the hardest part of your job? That got me thinking. I looked down and I told her, the hardest part is telling people no.
Goodbye's the word I'm hoping to tell him in November. I hope he'll have a nice time in South Carolina in that house he didn't bother to report. Because I keep telling people, look, tomorrow you got to get out and vote. But just as important, if not more important, November you got to get out and vote as well. It isn't all about tomorrow, but tomorrow is a big day. And I see one of the lieutenant governor candidates picked up a key endorsement of the Keystone Politics people, if you read their work. And I like what one of them wrote. They wrote, while other candidates like Mike Stack, who we've had on the program a couple of times, and Bradford County Commissioner Mark Smith have campaigned as loyal lefties, Brad Kaplinski has shown an unmatched mastery of the issues that actually matter to the lieutenant governor's actual job, the support of party activists, and has garnered a full-throated endorsement of progressive allies like the National Organization of Women and the Sierra Club, and also, as they point out, somebody named Shady, if you're a football fan. So good stuff, which is why we've asked Brad to come on the program and talk to us. Brad Kaplinski, thanks for taking time for us.
Absolutely, Rick. And, it seems very easy for Tom Corbett to say no. He says it a lot, and he says it to the bulk of this Commonwealth. I don't think there's any group of individuals that he's offended or harmed.
Except for the drillers who he's taken care of. He's never said no to them. Done pretty well for them. But here in this endorsement, they said that there are actual duties of the lieutenant governor other than being the heartbeat away from the governorship. And you are actually the guy who knows what they are.
Well, it is helpful to know what they are. We didn't wake up one day and say, hey, it'd be neat to be lieutenant governor. We took a look at the situation in Harrisburg. Obviously, our $350 million in debt that we had due to the botched incinerator project wasn't a union job, of course. If it had been, it would have been done on time and under budget. But that thing spiraled and it got on city council, and we had to figure out how to handle the debt. And there were not very good options out there, and the state tried to shove the Act 47 plan down our throat, as I know you've talked about. We said no. We stood up against them. We pushed back, and they pushed back a little bit, and then finally we started talking, and we were able to solve that debt situation. And in the process of that, made me realize, what else can we do for our municipalities, not just Harrisburg? And lieutenant governors that have a local government advisory committee. Nobody knows what it does. Nobody's ever heard of it. But I want to turn it into the conduit to build a better relationship, any relationship with our boroughs and townships and small and medium cities. Because honestly, if we went through the situation in Harrisburg, it shows that they're not listening to our municipalities, and we need to do something about that.
No, it sounds like you've actually got a plan for the lieutenant governor's job. Because I remember when the guy who's holding the position now, who I don't quite remember his name. I know he's got a new swimming pool and a couple SUVs that we paid for. But right. he was just, he just ran on, hey, vote for me because I want to sit pretty for pictures.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've never met Mr. Cawley. I'm sure he's a nice gentleman. He's 4 days older than I am. But, Pennsylvania is a great state in which, a guy like Cawley, who was a Bucks County commissioner, and a guy like me, who's a Harrisburg city councilman, can run for, the second highest position in the state. And we've had a heck of a time and wonderful time doing it. We've been doing it for 15 months. We've been to all 67 counties, of course, and only candidate to do that. And what we see is that people are sick and tired of this governor and realize he's got to go. I always say in my stump speech that this isn't a campaign between right and left. It's a campaign between right and wrong. And what Tom Corbett's done to the people of the Commonwealth is wrong. And I'm confident in November they're going to tell Tom Corbett that he's wrong, and we're going to get a Democratic governor.
Yeah, from your lips. But one of the things that people have asked me about you, and I said, one of the things that I can really say is anytime I go somewhere, Brad Kaplinski is there. I mean, you're just have you cloned yourself? Because it seems like you're everywhere.
Well, we're trying, and I'm in Allentown right now, and just trying to get the final touches and final materials out to folks, and we don't have a lot of staff. Heck, we don't have any staff. It's all been the volunteers and us doing it. We got a Ford Escape outside here that's got 112,000 miles on it. It's about 2.5 years old. So we've been running the hell out of it, and it's a great, great car. And hopefully, we always cross myself and say, God willing, it'll get us through May 20th, and I think it has. So we appreciate it. But no, we've been. It's what you got to do. Woody Allen said 90% of life is showing up. And with an office like lieutenant governor, without hundreds of thousands of bucks for TV, you got to show up, and we've been doing that.
So as lieutenant governor, Because I don't think anybody, I honestly don't think anybody knows what the lieutenant governor actually does, other than the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, right?
Right. Well,
So-
you're president of the Senate, and that's really important, especially now, because that used to be a place where progressive bills would go and die. Now it used to be. Now it's 27 Republicans and 23 Democrats, and a couple of the Republicans aren't so bad because they helped stop the liquor privatization, of course. But it was 30 Republicans, 20 Democrats, and so we've been able to get some inroads there, and I think that now the Senate can be a place where you can push some progressive legislation. You're also head of, as I talked about, the Local Government Advisory Committee. You also sit on the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency Board. Obviously, you're acting governor and serve in that capacity if necessary. You also are chair of the Board of Pardons, which is really important. I was at the Department of Justice and reviewed conditions of prisons for a few years there while I was there. So I think I can have something to add to that process as well. And then, what am I forgetting? I don't think I'm forgetting any of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Brad Kaplinski. He's running for the lieutenant governor on the Democratic side. So tomorrow when you go to vote, you will find his name if you're a registered Democrat. The website, Kaplinski2014.com. We've got a link at the ricksmithshow.com. Just click on Brad's name. It'll take you right there. In all of this and all of the handshaking you've done and the baby kissing and all of that, anything that has surprised you, anything that has made you go, this is the reason I'm doing this?
Well, I think every time we go and spread our message about helping municipalities, everybody shakes their head because, what we've seen is Tom Corbett didn't lie to us, okay? He said, and let's ignore that gas tax thing for a minute, but he said, I'm not going to raise your taxes, and he really hasn't. So, but what he's done is he's cut the programs. So what does that do to our municipalities, our city councils and our township supervisors and our school boards and our county commissioners? They're the ones raising the taxes. So we get a lot of shaking heads in there that, because maybe they just had a sinkhole open up in Aliquippa, or maybe the school board and media just had to raise their taxes. So they get it as far as this municipal trying to make a change and give our municipalities a voice,
right,
and get them out from under the thumb of the governor and the administration. And this isn't necessarily a Democratic Mr. Rendell could have paid some more attention to them as well, as we know. So I think it takes a new look. But yeah, I think that's what surprised me the most, the fact that everybody gets it and everybody wants to see something done about it.
Yeah, and that pledge that he took not to raise taxes, what has that done to our education? What has it done to our safety net? How many people has he kicked off of general assistance? Has he kicked off of Medicaid? All of these social safety net programs that his pledge, look at all those people that have been harmed by it. And I think about my daughter, Brad, because I bring everything back to me and my kids. My sixth grade daughter sits in a classroom with 100 kids in a class called LGI. You know what LGI stands for?
No.
Obviously, it stands for large group instruction in a sixth grade class with 100 kids. And I asked her, I go, Sam, what'd you learn? Well, she tries. That was my daughter's response. Because this governor has cut 20,000 education professionals from our schools, and now we got LGI.
Absolutely, and we've got to stop the rich schools from getting richer and the poor schools from getting poor. We're supposed to pay, the Commonwealth's supposed to pay, 50% of the schools and put that into the localities. And when they don't, now we're in the 20s, in many places, it puts the pressure on the school districts to either close schools or cut band or sports or lay off teachers, and it's absolutely not right. We certainly got cyber charter schools still getting the same amount of money as a bricks and mortar school, which is ridiculous, and we're not holding the charters to account at the least. And so we've got to have some huge changes, and I don't support the system to change the state system either, the PASHE system. I think that's going to hurt a lot of smaller schools like Edinburgh and Clarion and the one up in Wellsboro, which I'm blanking on right now. So, I mean, that's a big problem, too. I want to see a community college system. I want to see a system of community colleges so nobody has to drive more than an hour to get to to get to one of them. We need more VOTEC in our high schools. You know, this stuff is absolutely important, and it should be a no-brainer. But you know, the one who's got no brain is Tom Corbett on these things.
I'm with you. I'm glad you said that, in high schools, because when I was a kid growing up, there were all of those opportunities. There was wood shop, metal shop, auto, electronics, the cosmetology. There were all of those things, and yet my local high school here in Carlisle, they're cutting the cosmetology program. And in fact, the one girl I just met not too long ago said she's in the middle of the program. She's basically out of luck in the middle of the program. It's insane to me what we're allowing to happen to our school. So let me ask you this, as governor, because heaven forbid something were to happen to whoever who is chosen tomorrow, because someday that could happen. You could ascend to that top job. What's the priorities?
I mean, obviously the priority is education and the economy, and they're completely linked. You know, we work on the education that builds into a stronger economy to get incentives. You know, I'm up at the IBEW training facility up in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and I see, you know, unfinished solar panels, partially finished solar panels, and completed solar panels. And I'm like, what's going on here? And they say, oh, well, we were training our guys to, you know, install solar panels, and then Corbett goes and cuts the sunshine credit, you know, completely. And so we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to get green jobs. We're trying to keep our guys happy and help the environment. And, you know, this guy goes and cuts this thing. So, you know, we got to be smart about this. I mean, we're the sixth largest state/commonwealth in the country, and we don't act like it, you know, and we've got to make sure that we're able to take care of our people, because right now we're just letting all of them slip through the cracks. But education in the economy is got to be where it's at. And they talk about no, go ahead.
The website Kaplinsky2014.com. If you want to check out more of what Brad's got to say. I'm glad you mentioned the solar thing, because it's something I've been railing on for some time now. You know, because when I put solar panels on my house, the SRECs were like $225 a credit. Now they're down into the $20 range, and that because Corbett and many of the Republicans have just let the industry die. Pennsylvania's solar jobs have basically gone away. Unless you can go into New Jersey or into Maryland or D.C., there's no more solar going on, which to me is just a horrible decision and bad policy.
No doubt about it. And, you know, we're just not looking towards the future here at all. We're putting everything into natural gas, and you know, I was up in Wyoming County today. I was looking at a dehydration plant for the natural gas, and you know, this place it's having some severe problems. There's a lot of people up there who are having health reactions and things like that. It seems to be just this one plant, but you know, DEP and other things, we're putting all this money and commitment into natural gas, and we got to have some other options out there. So we've seen these things go from boom to bust real quick.
Yeah, and then that's the lesson that we absolutely need to learn. So I got about 30 seconds left. Throw the pitch out there. Why Brad Kaplinsky? Why now? The old Teddy Kennedy question. Why?
Sure. We need to help our municipalities. I've got the experience from being in Harrisburg to stand up to the Commonwealth and do the right thing. I want to help our municipalities in being within the Commonwealth. I've gotten the endorsements of Sierra Club, now the Humane PA, Keystone Politics, because we've been the most consistently progressive candidate, and on issues like choice and equality and labor and heck, marijuana reform and natural gas, holding them accountable and being able to do the right things for the Commonwealth.
There you go, Brad. I wish you nothing but the best of luck tomorrow, and if and when you win tomorrow, I'd love to have you back to talk about where we go to the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick.
Brad, thanks so much. Brad Kaplinsky. Again, the website, Kaplinsky2014.com. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Brad's name. It'll take you right there. Tomorrow, you got to get out. You got to vote. That's the important part. I don't care where you're at on the scale. I don't care what you got to get the vote. It's not that. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long. You just get up, you go, and you make the choice. Because I don't want to hear you complain. Don't want to hear any complaints. If your guy doesn't win. Quick break. Right back with Hour 2. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
It's the Rick Smith Show on Country Gold Radio, WIOO Carlisle, and WEEO Shippensburg.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Every working person in America knows that higher wages are better for them and for their families than low wages. Hundreds of economists agree. The National Employment Law Project's Christine Owens says the battle over raising the minimum wage is a fight to maintain basic standards and a strong wage floor at the bottom of our economy.
The minimum wage is our most fundamental workplace standard. It is the standard that is intended to ensure that someone who gets up and goes to work can earn a decent living.
Owens says more than 28 million people would benefit from raising the minimum wage, but she says the impact of the minimum wage goes well beyond those people to the economy in general. She says low wages are a drag on demand, which hurts job creation. Owens says low wages contribute to growing inequality that can subvert democracy and destabilize the nation. Owens says raising the minimum wage and stopping its erosion from inflation would strengthen the American economy.
It is about making sure that people who are working in these jobs that sort of line the bottom of the labor market will earn a decent living. But it is also about making sure that the wages in these jobs will lift up wages across the board. And the more we allow the minimum wage to deteriorate and to lose value, the more that pulls down wages across the board for all workers.
The Union for Mine Workers killed in the Turkish city of Soma say it's intolerable that mine workers in Turkey are denied their basic human right to work in an environment that guarantees their safety. The Mine Workers Union of Turkey is an affiliate of Industrial. Industrial says Turkey's record on mine safety is poor, and Industrial calls mine workers' deaths carnage. Industrial is calling on Turkey to ratify the International Labor Organization Convention 176 to create much safer working conditions in mines. Turkey has the worst mine safety record in Europe and third worst in the world. The National Labor Relations Board is ordering Boeing to stop illegal intimidation tactics against union members. Boeing systematically photographed and videotaped unionized engineers near Seattle and in Portland, Oregon. The actions are unfair labor practices. The Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace filed the unfair labor practices complaint against Boeing. Boeing has also been ordered to post within 2 weeks a notice saying employees are entitled to join a union and participate in union activities, and that Boeing won't videotape, photograph, or watch union activities. Boeing is evaluating whether to appeal. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
There was a controversial remark made by a member of your legal team comparing gay marriage to the union of 12-year-olds, saying both are illegal, which you called inappropriate.
It was an inappropriate analogy. You know, I think a much better analogy would have been brother and sister, don't you?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, here, let me. It was inappropriate, right? So here, let me help you by making it worse. And that's, I got to be honest, that's really been the storyline for this governor, hasn't it? Things are bad. Here, let me make them worse. Things are going the wrong direction, so let me make it even. That's just kind of very typical for what I think has happened for the last 3.5 years, which is why I'm hoping come November there is a change, and the beginning of this all starts tomorrow, which is why I have asked Jim Byrne, chairman of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, to come talk to us and give that last rah-rah to get out the vote tomorrow. Jim, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
So the big thing is what kind of turnout are we going to get tomorrow in a primary? That's kind of a midterm. What are we going to get?
Some of the counties are predicting 25 to 30 plus. Others are lighter. You got to give credit, though, to the folks who are going to be coming out and working hard tomorrow. And no, people may pick up the paper Wednesday and say, well, this wasn't my candidate. Well, if you didn't go to vote, shame on you.
Exactly.
People have been spending millions. They've been canvassing. You've been getting the robocalls. You've been getting the mailers in your mailbox, calls from friends. You've had the opportunity to vet the candidates for whichever race. Get out there and do what you got to do tomorrow to make sure your person gets on the ballot.
And that, to me, that's one of the fundamental building block of this experiment known as America is that vote, that right, that absolute right to vote, which to me, that's what this entire country is built on. The bedrock of our nation is that ballot box.
Absolutely. Just because it's raining or because maybe you're not as engaged on a particular set of issues, you have to go do this. I mean, we're on 230, 240 years now of this great experiment, and how much has been sacrificed and how much is always sacrificed. I mean, we're in the crosshairs of some pretty nasty people because of this constitutional right that we have created and defended. Don't waste it. Go out and do what you go out and exercise that right and vote, please.
I mean, there are times, Jim, that I go, I wish that guy couldn't vote. To be honest, you see, like last week, there were supposed to be 30 million of these constitutional, really far out right wingers. I mean, there are right wingers, and then there's, oh my God, you're insane. There were supposedly 30 million of them showing up in D.C., and there were like 6. And I was kind of going, you 6 shouldn't be allowed to vote. But I'm not the one who's able to say that, nor should anybody be able to say that.
That's right. I mean, some of the stuff these Tea Party characters do, it just makes you climb a wall. But at the end of the day, that's their when they do it a certain way, it's their constitutional right. When they start saying and doing ridiculous things and storming the White House and waving rebel flags, no, that's wrong. But for the most part, they have a right, as wacko as some of them are, to exercise their freedom of speech. But hey, quite frankly, in the last 3 years as chairman, what would I have done without them? How helpful were they to me in 2012? How helpful they were to our ticket? How helpful are they now with their divisive and their extremist views? They're fighting with their own party right now.
Yeah, and how useful have they been to me, to be honest? So maybe I shouldn't wish them away because that's content. I get that. That's almost 3 hours a night right there.
Oh, they're the gift that keeps on giving. They really are. But you've got to. But at the same time, you have a little humor. But the seriousness is, what happens if some of these extremists and this divisive rhetoric and these shallow views that they have were to allow to acquire more power? They've already created enough gridlock. They've already created enough trouble. We have to be diligent, you, me, and others who just want a good, expansive middle class, an opportunity for everyone, inclusion. We have to be diligent with these folks, or they will sneak in here and there. Next thing you know, there's too many of them.
And this is why I'm hoping sane, rational people will show up at the polls and cast their ballot, especially come November. Let's talk about the big one, though. Got to get to the governor's race. Four viable candidates who I believe can, all of them beat Tom Corbett. I forget who the group was, but 9 months in a row they've ranked him the most vulnerable Republican in the country, and for good reason. He's been a horrible governor.
He has been, and there's several different credible statewide and national polling institutions and others, whether it's a newspaper or polling institutions, that have continued to reaffirm this year in particular that he is one of the lowest rated, if not the lowest rated governor in the United States of America, and extremely and incredibly vulnerable to be defeated in November, and deservedly so. Pennsylvanians, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, you need to ask yourself, is this state, I'm quoting some lines from prior campaigns, but ask yourself, it's applicable. Is this state better off than it was when this governor took office? Absolutely not. And we can drill down the talking points if you want. But two things, really. Let's hit 2 of them, though. Job creation, we went from 7th to 47th. In education, how many children are now double and triple and quadruple sized classrooms? How many teachers have lost their jobs? That is a fundamental building block of our Commonwealth's future, and he has just gutted it. So he deserves to be where he is. I'm with you.
In the last hour, we talked with Brad Kaplinski, one of the lieutenant governor candidates, and I told him, I said, I have a 6th grade daughter who sits in a class called LGI. You know what LGI stands for, Jim?
No, I don't quite.
Starts for large group instruction. Large group instruction, LGI. There are 100 kids in the LGI class of 6th graders. I had university courses that did not have 100 people in them. And this is, to me, a direct correlation between the massive cuts, the cuts of 20,000 education professionals in this Commonwealth and this governor.
There is a direct correlation, and he can try to spin it any way he wants. He has the audacity now that he's trying to move to the middle to say that he's been a champion of education. If it weren't so tragic, it would almost be laughable, but it is not laughable. This is a man who has failed the future of this Commonwealth, and he has shown his two-dimensional thinking, his inability to think outside the box, and find ways to move revenue in the budget in order to prevent such draconian cuts from taking place. He could have done it if he wanted to, or if he had people around him with the skill set to do it. If he didn't, he chose to walk away from it. This aura of disinterest that you get from him when he's at a press conference or when he's speaking on an issue, he doesn't have the fire to sell the product because, quite frankly, I'm not so sure he believes in what he's doing. This is why we need to make the change in November. And we have 4 great candidates. You have Tom Wolf, you have Allison Schwartz, Rob McCord, Katie McGinney, any one of whom polling shows will beat this man. So let's have that conversation. That conversation will finish tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We'll rally behind our nominee, and we will work very hard, because we have to make sure this guy packs his bags.
You made an interesting statement there. It's he's either disinterested or he doesn't believe his rhetoric, or he's surrounded himself with bad people. Do you think that's it? Because I think there's that actually kind of sums it up. I think he doesn't really understand it or give it much thought, and the people that he has surrounded himself with seem to be ideologues and drillers.
It's true. I think it's probably a combination of those variables. They're all in there somewhere. I've never heard a fiery speech, and this is an executive. You need to have the passion and the fire to move others to your cause, which makes you wonder: does he understand it, or does he care about it, or would he rather be somewhere else? He just has that flat, disinterested effect. His colleagues in his own party have observed it. And Pennsylvanians who are looking for leadership, they have not gotten it from this man. You really wonder if he's really where he wants to be, or if it's the folks around him that are pushing the agenda, and he's just the front man for the whole charade.
No, as I keep saying, he wants to go. He bought the house in South Carolina. Let's send him there. Seems pretty interesting to me. Am I going to get you to tell me who you're going to vote for in the gubernatorial race? Anything?
Well, I'm going to vote for one of the 4 Democrats.
There you go.
I mean, that there's no doubt. So we've been blessed with 4 major league winners here. I mean, any one of these 4. Look at their platform. If you haven't made up your mind yet, you want to be undecided, go to their web pages, read about them. There's still time. Make an informed decision. But I've got to tell you, we've drilled down on all 4 of these great folks. Thanks to all 4 of them. Thank you, Rob McCord. Thank you, Tom Wolf. Thank you, Allison Schwartz. Thank you, Katie McGinney, for stepping up in Pennsylvania's crisis and making a choice to serve this state. And we will be blessed with whomever one of you wins tomorrow, and we will work hard to elect you in November.
And they've got an awful lot of work and a lot of digging and cleaning up to do of the mess that this governor that we've got sitting in our mansion right now has caused. There's just so much to do. On the state house level, there's some hope. I'm hoping that we gain some seats. I'm hoping that Democrats gain a seat or 2 in the Senate to kind of bring that into line. But on the state house level, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Jake Long, has thrown his hat into the 102nd state house district, and I understand you're going to go out and spend a little time with him tomorrow, getting people to the polls.
Absolutely. What a great group of activists out in Lebanon County, the Democratic Committee, Chris Tarsa, Monica Klein, Cornell Wilson, name of Lewis Harrow. There's so many good folks out there on the ground doing that hard work. Joe Allen Litz, Commissioner, good Democrats. When I became chairman 4 years ago, I had spoken to the committee and others in the last 4 years. I believe in the 67 county strategy. You're not going to turn them all blue, but you've got to work with the folks on the ground in the red counties to let them know they have a partner, they have an ally, and we believe in what they're doing. And Jake Long, what a great guy for labor, a great guy for our party, great guy for the middle class. He's helped elect so many Democrats over the years. Spoke to him a week ago. When I found out he finally committed and made the commitment to do this, I talked to the folks on the ground. I said, I have to be there. I'll be there probably 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I'm going to work the polls with Jake for 2 hours. We're going to get him on that ballot, and we're going to get him elected in November as well.
There you go. And to me, that idea of a 67 county strategy, I live in an area that's like 60-40. It's pretty heavily gerrymandered and pretty heavily Republican. there's got to be, in my view, somebody who runs in every election. There's got to be someone that at least points out how insane the incumbent has become. And I live in an area where the incumbent, to me, is just so far off the beaten path that someone's got to bring him back. So this idea of having a 67 county strategy and every district kind of strategy, to me, is important so that voters can go, okay, I have two options. So you go to the poll, you're just not writing Mickey Mouse in.
That's right, and it's got to be from the bottom up. I've spent 4 years working with committeemen and women and Democratic activists and other organizations that are in the fight with us, listening to what their issues are in their counties, what they need, how we can help, where we can help, and learning what from them, how we can be an asset or a partner to them. No Republican in any precinct or in any race should feel as if it's going to be safe or that they're going to be comfortable. We'll engage them everywhere we can and everywhere that we have an opportunity to be successful. And even in areas where it's heavy Republican, and you're talking about these statewide candidates, we're going to be on the ground there showing folks why we have a better candidate, why we're better on the issues, and why we're better for their everyday needs. And look, some of these counties, where Republican governors come in 80-20, 75-25, we're going to engage there. And they're not going to be able to count on that. They may come out of there 60-40. And if they do, that's a win for us because that we're going to clobber them in the Democratic area because we have the candidate and we have the message. So it's also going to help us to make them have to work in places they didn't have to work. Anywhere they go, they're going to see us waiting for them.
That's what you got to hear, and that's a good thing. Anyway, tomorrow I wish you the best. I hope that once this is over, everybody gets together, moves towards November, because to me, the guy who's sitting in that chair right now has got to go. A retirement party. Let's see how he likes unemployment.
This primary has been a debate, and the debate ends in about 24 hours, and then the real battle begins.
There you go. Jim, always great talk with you. I appreciate you taking time for us. I'll look forward to you coming back again and telling me who you voted for.
A pleasure. I look forward to having a conversation. I can tell you it's going to be one of the 4 Democrats. I'm going to stick to that.
Yeah, I know. That's very coy of you. Thanks so much, Jim. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Listening to The Rick Smith Show.
There isn't anyone immune from globalization. In fact, the confluence of greed and geography blends seamlessly over all of humanity. As the American workforce has become more sophisticated and smart, corporations have become less agreeable. Of course, there were numerous road signs that led to globalization, and at this point, somewhat improbable that any single cause could be raised from the economic wreckage it has created. However, 1976 may have been a high watermark for the American economy, where a change in the tax code emboldened corporations to move more operations overseas. Where these gutless entrepreneurs once shuttered factories in the Northeast and moved them to southern localities, they were now served up by the U.S. Congress, a world plate where even to their insatiable greed, the possibilities seemed limitless. The assault on American workers continued in the 1980s when the Reagan administration further retooled the tax code to allow foreign investors to set up American subsidiaries, thereby artfully managing the exodus of U.S.-based corporations. The unseemly alliance between Congress and corporations offers little solace to workers, but does shine a perpetual light on the misgivings of unregulated money flowing into the pockets of greedy politicians. Unions, while greatly weakened over the last 2 decades, continue to mount credible defenses, proposing balance, equity, and fairness for workers over the broader brush of Congress that would have us believe that globalization can regulate itself. This Rick Smith Show Labor History Minute is brought to you by a grant from the Labor Education Center at IUP. For more information, go to www.thericksmithshow.com.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I have some great news. You can now get the Rick Smith Show podcast on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Palm on demand and on the go. Get your Class War to go by downloading the Stitcher app on your smartphone by going to Stitcher.com and search for The Rick Smith Show, or go to our website at TheRickSmithShow.com and click on our Stitcher button. Together we can, and we will, rebuild a prosperous working class and leave opportunity for our children.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. Chances are...
The man who sends the investor class diving for their tax shelters. Rick Smith.
At every trough you stop to feed. With your arrogance, your ignorance and greed. Now here come the cuts and redundancy. Through the absolute indifference, the avarice, incompetence, your arrogance, your ignorance, your greed.
1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, anything on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So it was today, back in 1902, that 216 miners died in an explosion, and all that came after in an explosion at the Fratterville mine in Anderson County, Tennessee. All but 3 of Fratterville's adult males were killed. All but 3. The mine, at the time, actually had a reputation for treating their workers well. The pay was decent. The mine was represented by the United Mine Workers. For all intent and purposes, it was considered safe. The workers had a voice. Here's the thing, though. The theory on how it happened was that the mine from the next town actually not run, and this is one of those tales of you can do all of the right things and you can want to take the high road, but if you allow a situation where someone isn't, it's going to pull you down too. The mine from the next town over evidently had broken somehow into theirs, and a bunch of the methane gas that they weren't controlling in the other mine actually seeped in and exploded in the mine where they wanted to do the right thing. And to me, the cautionary tale here, the important part of this kind of the story is, this is why you have regulations that set a floor. Most people want to do better, and I think that's why I think these regulations, they actually have, over time, have to be improved and have to get better, so that as conditions get better, it continues to get better. This idea that we put regulations at the lowest level because, minimum standards. And you hear this from Republicans a lot. Oh, it's too costly. Oh, because, not every life is worth as much, right? Right? The idea that, one of those lowly miners, company profit's more important. Or as Don Blankenship in his memo back several years back said, we don't get paid to do all that safety stuff by, putting up framing and all that. We get paid to run coal. And that's the mindset. So you know what? So what if a couple people die? We got a whole bunch more above ground who would be more than happy to come down and do it. And that's kind of the mentality of corporate America, isn't it? This idea that, there's a number of injuries that we're okay with before it starts hurting the company's bottom line. There are a number of deaths that are okay. We see it with decisions to recall things. You remember the tire case where I think, to me, the tire thing, with Ford, and I think it was Bridgestone. Don't hold me to that because I'm not sure which tire. I forget which tire. I think it was Bridgestone though. They actually figured out before they even said, well, X amount of people are going to have to die before the cost of recalling them, before the costs would have exceeded what it would cost to recall them. So, well, we'll just say it's 10,000 people that had to die. Well, if 9,000 people die, well, hey, we save money, right? What about those 9,000 people? Well, that's the cost of it. Happens. Things happen, right? Isn't that how it is? And how would you like to be one of the 9,000? So it's one of those things that gets me thinking about regulation. And a story like this that caught my attention today makes me go, it's not surprising. It's human nature. And it wasn't just 1902. It could have been 2002 or 2022. It doesn't matter. It's the same situation. The same exact situation where if you allow, let's say, a trucking company to skirt going through inspections. Don't worry, they're all right. They make a contribution to the DOT ball. Well, you know what's going to happen? They're going to profit. They're going to do well. They're going to take work from the other companies that are going to have to cut corners. And it doesn't matter what industry you're talking about. If you allow one bad actor to continue and to pull others down, you end up with this cutthroat competition, right? That's not what the free market is about. As much as the righties love to say, we need to be business friendly and the free market and free enterprise, we love big sloppy wet cash. The reality is that's not how it's supposed to be. And the ones that are the ones advocating for this aren't the ones who are dying from their decisions. But I guess, there are those who are willing to sacrifice you or me or our kids so that they can have just a little bit more. And do we hold them accountable? I mean, a little fine, slap on the wrist. But we don't really ever see anyone locked up, do we? I don't remember anyone from the tire thing. I don't remember anybody going to jail. No one went to jail for the Toyota thing with the accelerator that stuck. But a guy did go to jail. And this is one of those things that you find out after the fact. During his trial, he claimed, look, the accelerator stuck. I couldn't stop the car. He ended up being convicted of a crime and ended up going to jail, while the person who made the car didn't. Doesn't that seem odd? Well, it does seem American. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News, they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, no, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they were pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Some like it hot, so let's turn up the heat till we fry. Feel the heat burning you up, ready or not.
Exposing GOP half-truths, lies, and hypocrisy every weeknight from 9 to midnight. Rick Smith.
Everything's raising but the wages. Everything's raising but the wages. Gasoline, groceries, and our houses. Everything's raising but the wages.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So the big rally, June 2nd, I believe it's going to be, Raise the Wage PA is holding their rally on the Capitol steps on the 3rd of June from 1 to 3 p.m. to say, hey, we need a raise. The minimum wage should have been risen a couple of years ago, so we need to raise the minimum wage. But what I like is last week, and we've been talking about this for some time, you had the fast food workers saying, you know what, heck with the minimum wage. We want living wage. We want a decent wage. And as I've tweeted out a couple of times, under the frame of the old bread and roses, fries, yes, but a living wage too. That should be the call that we push for. So last week, a lot of fast food workers out in the street saying, you know what, we want $15 an hour and a union, a voice on the job, the dignity, the respect that comes with it. That was last week. This week they're talking about, we're going to the shareholders meeting and we're gonna shake things up, which is why I've asked Ashona Osborne. She is one of the striking workers from last week, but also going to be one of those people going to the shareholders meeting in Chicago. Ashona, thanks for taking time for us.
Sure. Thank you for having me, giving me the opportunity to talk. I just want to let everyone know, this is something really huge. This is something that's really taking action and is making history, and we're not stopping until we get that raised minimum wage. If I'm not mistaken, back in the 1970s, minimum wage was $5.15, and we didn't get raised until about the 1970s or something, when they took it up to $17.15, and then in the late 90s rose it to 10 cents just to $7.25. It's now 2014. I feel like it is time for a raise. I work at least 40 hours a week, and I'm only doing $7.25 an hour. My CEO makes $6,000 an hour, and it's on the way to work, you're making so much, and that's you saving up in 5 years just to make that much that you make in 1 hour. Yeah, there's something wrong with that. Yeah, there is. There really is. And it's you can afford to pay me more. There is so much you could do within 1 hour. Within just 1 hour, I could do so many duties at my job. I feel like that is way worth more than $7.25.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Ashona, when you look at this, the wealth that the $6,000, because he doesn't actually produce anything, so the $6,000 an hour that he's taking, that's the wealth that you've created for him to be able to take, because he doesn't actually make any product. You're the people who do it. You're the people who cook the burgers. You're the one who says, hi, how you doing? Can I take your order? With a smile on your face, not him.
Exactly. This is what we do. If it wasn't for us workers, there would be no McDonald's or no Wendy's or no KFC or anything. It's not even fast food that's trying to raise minimum wage. It's minimum wage all over the world. People feel like they're way worth more than they're doing, where we're putting our services at. I didn't know about McDonald's until I started working at McDonald's, and I was lucky that I wasted my services there at that job.
So last week you're out in the street saying that we demand $15 an hour and a voice on the job. Now you're talking about going to the CEOs, to the shareholders meeting and saying, hey, make it right now.
I have a lot to say to Mr. Donald Thompson. I just hope that he really gives us the opportunity to say what we have to say, even though he might give us a battle and a fight about it. But I'm ready to go do what I got to do. Have the opportunity to take into advantage and scream as loud as I can, say what I got to say, and we're going to get this 15 in the union.
And the other part of this is, the respect that comes with it. I mean, to me, for too long, I believe we've allowed people in the corner offices, in the CEO suites, to look down on the people who actually work for a living. And for me, part of what you're doing, part of that taking to the streets and demanding respect is respecting low-wage work and respecting all work.
Exactly. And if you think about it, everyone, the whole job industry is based off of single women and colored women. There's nothing but women in these job industries. And it's there's no respect for us. It's no respect. If I'm not mistaken, my CEO never even put the burger his whole life. He came out of college and hopped right into corporate and worked his way up to CEO. There is no way that you can tell me I'm not worth more than what I'm doing, and I have to struggle every 2 weeks to provide for my 4-year-old son, let alone government assistance and making it even more difficult. And you're just living large. I know that it could be raised.
But what we hear, Shona, is that it's just not in the budget. I'm sorry, the money's just not there. I mean, the CEO needs to make $6,000 an hour, and the executives, the slew of executives and vice presidents and regional managers and regional directors and their assistants. There's all of this largesse that has to go to that class. That sorry, there's just not enough left for you and your children.
Right.
Isn't that what we're told?
Right. Yes, it is. And it's like, even, I believe that McDonald's just had a corporate board meeting, and every board member that is on that board is making at least, $500,000 each of them, and it's only 12 of them.
Wow. That's obscene. I mean, that really is obscene, and it's got to be something where you go, no, this is ridiculous. I'm the one who's behind here sweating behind this. I'm the one who's doing all this work. So let me ask you, because one of the other frames that we heard, and maybe you could debunk this and you can help me out with this. I hear and I get from people emailing me all the time that the only people who do the kind of work that you're doing are pimply-faced teenagers who are just looking for a little money for Saturday, or granny who needs bingo money. I'm curious, where you work, what percentage of the workforce fits into that pimply-faced teenager who just needs a little extra money to, for his date Saturday night, or granny going to bingo?
Everyone at my specific McDonald's is over the age of 20 years old. We're all adults. There might be a good 2 or 3 who are teenagers still in high school, but it's their first job. Majority of the people I work with are all 20 years old, that are all adults that have actual lives, kids and needs and wants. It's not about no. That's how they perceive the society to be, a bunch of malice young teenagers who don't know how to think and act on their rights. And this is what I'm talking about. This is why they have to listen, understand that it's not teenagers, this is grown people, grown women and men who do have lives of themselves, who have kids, who are single parents, trying to make it work, struggle over 725. It's not realistic. It's poverty, and it needs to stop.
I'm right there with you. We had spoken with a number of fast food workers here over the past several months. Well, since this began 18 months ago in New York, and I'm shocked by how many of them have had stories of being homeless at one point, or being near homeless, or you go to the cupboards and there's nothing there. I'm curious, in the place where you work, anybody that because it's shocking to me to find that the people who are serving me my meals go home to a homeless shelter or maybe worse.
Yeah, some people do have, those stories, and that can make it to work, and it's like they're very strong because they're dealing with a lot outside of McDonald's walls, and it's like no one knows what they're dealing with besides themselves. There are a couple of my coworkers and myself exactly, who is just going through struggles with life, and being if it's homeless or trying to find food to put on the table or shoes to put on my son's feet. It's a struggle.
So what do you say? Because I'm sure this is going to come up when you go to the shareholders meeting, that sorry, we just can't afford it. Your job isn't worth that much.
Well, then without us, what would it be? I bet if everyone would just leave, you would have to start doing our job, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to do that. If you can afford to have these $500,000 board meetings that only last for an hour, if you can afford to buy company jets just to travel to different McDonald's, if you can afford what have you with $6,000 an hour and more, I'm pretty sure you could afford to give me a couple more dollars. I'm pretty sure that you can afford to raise my check, because I am a worker for your company, and without us, there would be no company. That's an excuse, and I'm tired of you making excuses. So go in those pockets, come out with something, and let's just get this over with. It's to the point where there is no choice now. There's no choice. It's going to happen, and it is going to happen. That's what we're going to do. When we go to the shareholders meeting, we're going to take action. We're going to go up to them doors, and we're going to wait until they hear what we have to say.
Wow, I got to tell you, with the fire and the passion I hear in your voice, I'm of no doubt things are going to get better and change. What do you tell the people who may be working in fast food in our area, that because there were no actions in my neck of the woods, and I'm hoping that by hearing voices like yours and others, they start looking at each other going, you know what, out in Pittsburgh they're doing it, and in Chicago they're doing it, in St. Louis and Milwaukee and all over the country and really all over the world. Workers are saying, hey, you know what, we can do better. I'm hoping people here, get the idea and move forward with you guys. What do you say to them?
I say go out and come with us. I'm telling you, if you think that you're worth the $7.25 and you're worth the disrespect and you're worth the look down and the degradation and the judgmental and you're worth all that, then stay put and don't bother. But for those who know that when they look at their baby's ass and they know they could do more for their kids, come on out and say that you want raise in minimum wage. For those who know that they are worth more than what they're doing, then come on out. Do not be scared. Do not let them intimidate you. That's what they're doing to me, and I'm still scared, but I'm staying strong to what I believe in. These are my rights. You can fight to right to fight to vote and all that, but whenever you do that, that's not really affecting you directly. Striking to raise minimum wage, that is affecting me in what I'm doing in my work. This is affecting me in my pay. So this is a personal thing. I need everyone to come out and support. Get what you have to do what you have to do, say what you have to say. This is your time. And I feel like this is our time. The youth of the community is just getting stronger and stronger, and the public voice is getting bigger and bigger, and we need everything, all the support we had. We had faith leaders supporting us. We have Obama supporting us. We have so many communities and states and countries and cities who are all behind us. It's just getting more and more bigger and bigger, and it's like there's no stopping us now. Yep. You can't stop us now.
And with voices like yours, I'm right there with you. Did you ever think that at any point in your life that you'd be doing this? Do you have any union background? Because wow, you're fantastic.
No, I don't. This is my very first action, so I'm like so overwhelmed and so excited. Like I feel like such. I don't even know what to say. Like I'm just so overwhelmed and so proud of myself and proud of my community for really standing up for what we believe in.
And the word that I use often, and the reason that I ask that question is because it's that empowerment. It's that sense of, maybe I never thought I could do this, but now that I've done it, I feel empowered. And this is why I say quite often the wealth class of this country wants to see organized labor and unions destroyed because of that sense of empowerment and that sense of I can change the world.
Right.
And
that's what I feel like I'm doing. I feel like not just me, but everyone that's with me, I feel like we are changing something. We are making history. This is going to be in my son's history book when he's in high school. I'm going to be able to tell him, Mommy was walking to help you, to give you better financial support. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm fighting for.
Outstanding. Now, the Chicago meeting, that's coming up when? Fairly soon, right?
Yeah, we are actually leaving tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
And going to go out to see, in what is it, out near Chicago somewhere, right?
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I've never been to Chicago, so this is like my first time for everything.
There you go. But I'm sure you're going to give them hell, and I would love to hear how it turns out. If you'll come back and spend a couple minutes with us here on the program and tell us what went on, I'd really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I would love to.
Shauna, I really appreciate you taking time for us, and best of luck in Chicago.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
All right. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Oklahomans have been shocked with a surprise from their own supposedly conservative state officials. Thousands of Sooners have been putting solar panels on their homes to save on energy costs and reduce fossil fuel pollution. Switching to solar even allows them to generate excess electricity, which they can transmit back to the grid and earn a credit on their monthly bills. To reward such common sense and socially beneficial energy innovation, the state's Republican-controlled government slapped a new fee, actually a tax, on the bills of those who convert from grid takers to grid producers in the future. This crude slap in the face came with no advance notice, no public hearings, and no legislative debate. It just appeared out of nowhere, said one local solar business owner. But this was not from nowhere. It came from a secretive corporate front group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. In exchange for getting millions of dollars from the Koch brothers, utilities, and other dirty energy interests, ALEC is peddling a cookie-cutter bill from state to state that stops homeowners from switching to solar by taxing the energy they produce. ALEC even adds insult to the injury its coke-headed backers are doing by calling such homeowners free riders on the system. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin, who was in on this despicable sneak attack from the start, had her ego stroked by the Koch finance front group last year. ALEC presented its Thomas Jefferson Freedom Award to Fallin for her, quote, record of advancing free markets and individual liberty. This is Jim Hightower saying, now we know what the Koch-ALEC complex means by free markets and liberty. They mean that corporate energy interests should be free to stifle your individual liberty. Thomas Jefferson would be ashamed to have his name attached to anything that this cabal of corporate and governmental kleptocrats come up with.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Would you dive 14 feet deep in the Susquehanna to keep a bridge safe? Would you spend night after night with prisoners to keep your community safe? Would you spend Christmas Eve plowing snow to keep roads safe? AFSCME members do. Men and women who choose to serve in public service. Mine inspectors, 911 dispatchers, healthcare workers, parole agents. You may not think about them, but no, they're all thinking about you. This message brought to you by AFSCME Council 13. Would you dive?
The man who sends the investor class diving for their tax shelters. Rick Smith.
The rich pay too much taxes, the poor get way too much. Instead of schools, build prisons and lock the children up. We won't believe those lies again, because God is a Republican.
1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Yeah, listen to that story, and I got to be honest, it's one of those things that just grabs you when you see a company that made $5 billion in profit last year. $5 billion. And you look at, and I guess you can go CEO by CEO. You see these exorbitant salaries, these massive salaries, and it's not a matter of envy, going, oh well, I'm jealous. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of going, look, our labor creates all of this wealth, and we're not sharing in it. Which is why I have always said there has to be a strong, vibrant labor movement in this country to distribute wealth in a way where working people go, I get something out of it. And you think about all of the tax dollars that we use to subsidize these low-wage industries across the spectrum, be it retail, be it fast food, be it cleaning hotel rooms, be it the entire service sector that has really gone the way of really very low wages, where we know beyond exception, where there's collective bargaining, where there's an opportunity to negotiate, there's at least some measure of decent wages and benefits, health care, pensions, something. And to me, that's the beginning of this answer. And during the break, Brian sent me an email that kind of highlights this CEO greed. And he sent me a story about, last week, we talked a little bit about the mine tragedy in Turkey, where, a whole boatload of, I think it was like 100 and some people were killed. And they were talking about the CEO of this Anglo-American platinum company. They're the mining company, evidently, that owns a bunch of mines all around the world, and one in South Africa where they've been having strikes because they want to raise the wages, obviously. And the CEO, this guy Griffith, this Chris Griffith, said he was, the striking people were missing the point, and now understand his take-home pay monthly is over $140,000 a month, and the take-home pay of an entry-level person is like $500. And he said, and it was one of these really bizarre quotes, and he said that South Africa is just overloaded, overflowing with lower skilled people. And he said that nobody can reasonably compare his labor, his knowledge and his, all of this stuff to those people. And he was upset. He said, I run this company and deal with all this nonsense for nothing? He says, I'm not demanding to be paid what I'm not worth. And again, it comes back to this idea that these folks who sit in these corner offices, this CEO class, these folks, they look down on the people who actually do the work with disdain. They look down on them as tools to be minimized. I mean, really, stop and think. And it's not just fast food, it's every business. This is what CEO class thinking has brought us. Whether it's the guy who owns Papa John's, or it's the CEO of McDonald's, or it's the CEO of Coke Industries. The whole idea is those people aren't worth what I'm worth. And they work for me at my pleasure, which is why I keep saying you need to have that contract. Now, of course, there was a media dust storm. People were, what? He almost apologized, I say, because all he apologized was for his choice of words. And I guess, his choice of words were wrong. Maybe you could have eased it a little bit, but he didn't apologize for the underlying sentiment, which is you workers aren't worth anything. You're a dime a dozen. And whether I pay you nothing, or you're injured, or you die, or any of these things is of no consequence to me, because you don't really matter. And understand, that is CEO thinking. For all of the rhetoric, all of the talking points, all of the PR, all of that nonsense, the reality is these folks really don't care. You're an item on a spreadsheet. You're the cost of labor. And however they can minimize that by eliminating redundancies in human capital, they're going to do, man. And this argument against, if you raise the minimum wage too high, they'll mechanize. Hey, dummy, they're going to mechanize anyway. What are you talking about? When the opportunity strikes and we give them a tax break to invest in new machinery, what do you think they do? It is what it is. So what you have to do is you have to have the bargaining power at the location to say, you can't mechanize. And yes, at some point you have to say no. And workers have to go, no, we're not going to allow you to mechanize. At some point, you've got to give some power to workers, don't you? Because if we don't, China can build the rail from China here to the U.S. and we can have a flood of low-skilled workers. And what will that mean to the entire scale? Well, I mean, the bottom will fall out. But you know what we'll also get? Really high-skilled laborers. Really smart people. And I wonder, just a thought, I wonder what our CEO class would think if we brought in CEOs from other places to do their jobs. Oh, we couldn't possibly, because they're too valuable, right? Nonsense. But that's what they've got us believing. And we've got to change the way we think about this stuff. We've got to change the way we talk about this stuff. And most importantly, beyond anything, we've got to respect work. And I don't care what it is you do. And this has always been one of my pet peeves. We've got to respect the work that everyone does. Because there's dignity and respect in a hard day's work. There's dignity and respect in getting up and doing your best each and every day. And you know the thing that gets me is I talk to these fast food restaurant workers, man. These are some dedicated people who are some broke people. All because you've got a class of CEOs who, hey, they're playing the game, man. They're playing the game. And you know what? They're winning. Quick break. Right back with Hour 3. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show, changing America for the better. It's the Rick Smith Show on Country Gold Radio, WIOO Carlisle, and WEEO Shippensburg.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Every working person in America knows that higher wages are better for them and for their families than low wages. Hundreds of economists agree. The National Employment Law Project's Christine Owens says the battle over raising the minimum wage is a fight to maintain basic standards and a strong wage floor at the bottom of our economy.
The minimum wage is our most fundamental workplace standard. It is the standard that is intended to ensure that someone who gets up and goes to work can earn a decent living.
Owens says more than 28 million people would benefit from raising the minimum wage, but she says the impact of the minimum wage goes well beyond those people to the economy in general. She says low wages are a drag on demand, which hurts job creation. Owens says low wages contribute to growing inequality that can subvert democracy and destabilize the nation. Owens says raising the minimum wage and stopping its erosion from inflation would strengthen the American economy.
It is about making sure that people who are working in these jobs that sort of line the bottom of the labor market will earn a decent living. But it is also about making sure that the wages in these jobs will lift up wages across the board. And the more we allow the minimum wage to deteriorate and to lose value, the more that pulls down wages across the board for all workers.
The Union for Mine Workers killed in the Turkish city of Soma say it's intolerable that mine workers in Turkey are denied their basic human right to work in an environment that guarantees their safety. The Mine Workers Union of Turkey is an affiliate of Industrial. Industrial says Turkey's record on mine safety is poor, and Industrial calls mine workers' deaths carnage. Industrial is calling on Turkey to ratify the International Labor Organization Convention 176 to create much safer working conditions in mines. Turkey has the worst mine safety record in Europe and third worst in the world. The National Labor Relations Board is ordering Boeing to stop illegal intimidation tactics against union members. Boeing systematically photographed and videotaped unionized engineers near Seattle and in Portland, Oregon. The actions are unfair labor practices. The Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace filed the unfair labor practices complaint against Boeing. Boeing has also been ordered to post within 2 weeks a notice saying employees are entitled to join a union and participate in union activities, and that Boeing won't videotape, photograph, or watch union activities. Boeing is evaluating whether to appeal. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
The billionaires don't want you to vote this year. We'll send you a message that's loud and clear that the votes can't be counted in your community. Why even register? Don't waste your energy. Don't go to the polls on election day, because we bought the election and it better go our way. And on election night, we'll sit back and glow. The billionaires don't want you to vote.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Tomorrow's the big day. Big day, May 20th, the primary day. We get to decide who the gubernatorial candidate will be, who hopefully come November will send Tom Corbett to South Carolina. He's got the house. Didn't bother reporting it, but he's got the house all set up and being decorated as we speak. So maybe he's been reading the tea cards as well, although every headline has him as the most vulnerable governor in the country. And good riddance couldn't come too soon. Anyway, some big news out in California. Jerry Brown evidently signed a piece of legislation last Wednesday that would ban dark money. And here to talk a little bit about it, we've got Brad Friedman from bradblog.com to come fill us in on what this means, and maybe, just a thought, maybe we'll figure out how we get it done here. Brad, thanks for taking time for us.
Always my pleasure, and especially thank you for playing that Paul Weyrich clip at the top, because that really is the Rosetta Stone for voter suppression, Republican voter suppression in this country. So really glad to hear that clip, and really glad to hear that you guys finally may be done with the guy who I would call the dumbest governor in the country if it weren't for Jan Brewer out in Arizona, but he's still running pretty close to her, I think.
Yeah, he's right there, and it's scary stuff, because I think we can do much better. And there are 4 candidates on the Democratic side who, I got to be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing any one of them.
Oh, good news! Glad to hear it. I haven't even been yet able to follow that race, only enough to know that Corbett is in trouble. So that's good news, because he has just really been terrible. What has happened over the last year with you guys out there and the polling place photo ID stuff is just disgraceful. And I used to live in Pennsylvania, so I'm embarrassed for everyone, I'm afraid.
What's interesting for me, though, Brad, is you go back to the trial, and what was really shocking is that the Commonwealth in the stipulation of fact, because as you know, in any trial, both sides agree, okay, we agree that on these certain things so that we don't have to litigate them. In the stipulation of fact, though, the Commonwealth agreed that they had never found a case where what they passed and they were defending had ever happened, never been prosecuted, ever in the history of civilization. They have no idea if it would ever happen in the future, but we need it to protect the dignity of the vote.
Yeah, and you're not overstating it. That's actually what the stipulation said. They were aware of no such that type of voter fraud in Pennsylvania or anywhere else ever in history, and they didn't care, and they were moving forward anyway. But you know what? Every time these issues have come up for trial, whether it's been in Pennsylvania, whether we just saw it on the federal level up in Wisconsin, they all have to admit that. They have to admit the same thing. They have to say, yes, we have no actual evidence of polling place impersonation happening, the only type of fraud that could possibly be deterred by these laws. They all have to make that admission, and that's why I've been writing at bradblog.com and at Salon last week. I wrote that we may be at peak GOP voter fraud. In other words, now that all of this stuff is coming up in courts, and they actually have to make their case beyond making their case at Fox News, now we're seeing that, there is no there. There is no evidence there for this fraud that they claim, and at the same time, we have plenty of evidence showing that perfectly, legal voters, hundreds of thousands of them, if not millions of them across the country, would lose their right to vote under these laws. So we had a very good ruling last week, or was it 2 weeks ago now, up there in Wisconsin on the federal level.
Right.
And that judge, a 90-page document just destroyed the entire voter fraud claim nonsense, and that decision is going to be very useful down in Texas, out in North Carolina, where these laws are also being challenged on the federal level. So, I'm going to be careful here, but I think that could be very good news finally after, I've been on this beat for 10 years when nobody was paying attention. I was trying to, point people to that Paul Weyrich audio and say, hey, pay attention to what they're doing. Now people are paying attention, and now maybe finally that whole 10-year scam to put these laws in place may finally be coming to an end. We'll see.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Brad, and this is what bothers me. That Weyrich clip was 1980 to a group of Baptist ministers at a Christian conference where they're trying to get these people of the cloth to get into the idea of voter suppression, and they always come up with scheme after scheme after scheme. So this latest one that obviously, like we both hope, will go away. What's the next one? I mean, you go back to 2000, where you look at Florida, for instance, where they went through and they purged people because they might be felons. And then you find that they did this caging thing. And then now this. What's next? And in the process, how bad is our democracy being screwed over by people like George Bush, by people like Scott Walker, by people like Tom Corbett?
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem. What is it? The arc of the moral universe bends, but it bends towards justice, but it takes a while. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I think there's a lot of people who can't even believe that we are fighting some of these fights that were supposed to have been settled, 50 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, which the Supreme Court comes along and guts. So. Yeah, the fight continues. We seem to have, one step forward, two steps back sometimes. And when, I hear people complaining about what the Supreme Court did and blaming, George W. Bush for stacking the court with these right-wing activist jurists who, make no mistake, they are not conservative, they are not constitutionalists, they are activist jurists. They blame George Bush. You know what? I don't blame George Bush. I blame John Kerry for 2004 folding over, instead of fighting to make sure that every vote was counted. This stuff matters, and it doesn't just matter one day. If you get out there and cast your vote, you got to stay in there, make sure your vote is counted accurately, because there's a long-term effect to all of this stuff. So, yeah, it does matter. Elections really do matter. And, of course, that brings us back to California, to the original question you had raised about what Jerry Brown just signed out here. And it's a small step, but it's a good step. It's a step that I hope the rest of the nation models to finally say, you know what, if you want to put millions and millions of dollars into our elections, as obscene as that already is, thanks to that same Supreme Court, okay, fine. We can't stop that for now, but we can at least make you disclose who you are, so we know who it is, at least, who is buying off our elections, and we can start from there. And that's where we're starting right now in California as of last week, or at least as of July 1 when this law goes into effect, because back in 2012, we had the Koch brothers, a couple of groups, Koch brothers groups, who put $15 million into two different ballot initiatives. By the way, they lost in both cases. The Koch brothers lost. In one case, they were trying to get an initiative approved. The other one, they were trying to defeat it. They lost on both counts, but they spent $15 million. Nobody knew where that money came from as it poured into California, and it was all because it was, put through this web of nonprofit groups that were specifically built to keep it all a secret and to not let the people know who it was that was bastardizing their elections. So they can't do that anymore, at least not in California, at least according to this law, at least until they figure out how to get away with it again.
And that's it, how they get around it again. Because, people keep telling me, well, Rick, unions spend a lot of money on elections. And I keep going, yeah, that's true. They spend some money, not nearly Koch brother and billionaire money, but they do spend some. And, oh, by the way, just so you know where every dollar of dues money goes. You know where the union's money goes, because they got to fill out LM2s, and there's an entire department that oversees all that. There isn't a department finding out where these billionaires are spending their money and how they're going after destroying our democratic process.
Right. Well, that's right. And remember when the Supreme Court decided Citizens United, the theory there was that, well, there's campaign laws that will require these people to disclose who they are, and therefore a corporation, they would be too embarrassed. They would face the wrath of their shareholders if they supported something that wasn't popular. But the fact of the matter is they figured out how to game that system as well by using this 501c4 system, this, calling themselves nonprofit social welfare organizations. Well, they're not social welfare organizations. They are they're campaign organizations meant to elect or defeat candidates, to pass or block ballot initiatives going on. They are political organizations, and they have bastardized that system as well, the not-for-profit 501c4 scheme under the IRS. And now they have the gall to go out and pretend that these so-called conservative groups are being targeted by the IRS. No, they are not, but I sure as hell wish they were, because whether it's a right-wing group or a non-right-wing group, they are taking advantage of this system that was never meant to be used for elections and campaigning, and that needs to stop, and all of those C4 groups need to be put out of business as far as I'm concerned.
I'm right there with you. And the whole IRS thing, I really do wish they were selectively figuring out who it was that they're giving this exemption to, because the real question for me is, look, when you looked at it in the light of day, you realize the IRS was supposedly targeting everyone, as they should have been all along.
Right.
But the question is am I willing to have my tax dollars pay for what they're doing? And that's the really sick part of this. You look at a group like the American Legislative Exchange Council, who has one of these exempt statuses, to where I'm actually paying for the poison that they're pushing.
That's right. Oh, yeah, they're getting subsidies to bastardize our elections. That's what's amazing. By the way, you mentioned the American Legislative Exchange Council. You know who founded that, don't you?
Of course, the guy at the beginning of the clip.
Exactly right. So Paul Weyrich, he founds that thing. He's all about making it more difficult for their enemies to be able to cast their vote at all. And it has been ALEC then that had been pushing those photo ID laws all over the country. So, Republicans play the long game. They're not just looking at, the upcoming election. They're looking at elections down the road, elections you and I haven't even begun to think about. They play the long game.
Yep.
Democrats don't really do that.
Yeah, I don't know what Democrats really do, and I don't really want to get into what game they play, but you're right, because I just had a conversation with one of my Republican friends who's in the system, so to speak. They're already thinking about the 2020 election here in Pennsylvania, because that's the next time they get to gerrymander all the districts.
Yeah, and that was something that, after the 2008, I was trying to warn people, that a lot of Democrats were relieved, progressives were relieved when Barack Obama came in there, setting aside, how progressive he has or hasn't turned out to be. After 2008, a lot of them said, okay, we're done, we're safe, we made it, we got out of the Bush era alive, we can rest a little bit. And I kept thinking, no, you can't. You got 2010 coming up, and I know it's an off-year election, but you're absolutely right. That's when they're going to divvy up the whole country and do the gerrymandering that we're now paying a price for, because you had more Democrats, far more Democrats were voted, votes were cast in 2012, and yet you still end up with a Republican House. So, yeah, these elections matter, whether it's 2010, 2020, any of them. They all have consequences that I don't think people understand. And I got to blame for much of this the Democrats, because they don't really point out why this is important. They don't really give voters something to vote for. It's not enough to go out there, as Harry Reid has been doing, and sort of demonizing the Koch brothers. They deserve to be demonized.
But let me do that.
Yeah, exactly. Let you do that. Let the talk show hosts do that. But no, listen, they can do it, but I don't think that people, vote against things. They're not going to go vote for Democrats because those Koch brothers are bad. They're going to go vote for Democrats because if Democrats give them something to vote for. Put us in office, we'll raise the minimum wage. We'll put forward an amendment to get money out of politics. Give us something to vote for, and I think Democrats, I think voters actually of all stripes will respond to that, but not to a negative, as they seem to do time and again.
But I think about 2008, we voted Obama and really the Democrats swept in on we're going to create jobs and we're going to get health care for people. And they allowed the Republicans to really screw that whole promise up by demanding a much smaller stimulus, a pathetically small stimulus. That worked, but it was tiny, should have been much chunkier, much bigger. And then we got Obamacare, and I'm going, well, we could have done much better on both fronts, especially when you're talking about having the majority in a big way. You had steamroller power, and you got mediocre on both ends.
Well, and listen, it would have been one thing if that's what they had to do, to bring Republicans along. But they negotiated with themselves in advance.
Yep.
It wasn't the Republicans who made them add all of those tax cuts to the stimulus. That was Obama who decided to do it on his own before the Republicans even got into the game. Same thing with Obamacare. Had they gone in there fighting for single payer, they probably would have compromised with a public option. Instead, they went in there sort of talking about a public option, took single payer off the table, and then you end up with this, this very right-wing healthcare bill with absolutely no support from Republicans, and then you spend years, pretending that the Republicans, that it's some radical left-wing plan, and it never was. You got to go in there, you got to fight for what you believe in, you got to stand up for what you believe in, and then you compromise when you have to get something passed. You don't start out from a compromised position. That's what Democrats, I fear, do just all too often.
Well, I think as Dick Cheney said, and I despise Dick Cheney. I think he should probably be in jail somewhere, but that's just a thought.
Probably. He definitely should be in jail somewhere, Rick.
Okay, I'm with you. Okay. He said that Democrats, they'll cave. That's what they do. And
yep.
I don't know that you can argue too much with that. Last thing I had for you, Brad, I had a number of emails. About 10 people emailed me because we've been carrying the green news clips, which are fantastic and really very good response. You said earlier, and they demanded that I correct this, so I just have to do what the listeners want. Evidently,
did we make an error?
A very small, and I think it's such a small error, but it was brought up by a whole bunch of people. You said that Reagan put solar panels on the roof of the White House.
Oh no! Did I?
Yeah, that's what the news clip said. It was hot water. It was the solar tubes for the hot water. That's what people pointed out. Like I said, very, very minimal, but I had to bring it up.
Oh, well, no. Well, hang on a second. We got to figure this out. No, we said Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the roof.
Carter put them on, and Reagan took them off.
Reagan took them off, right?
The distinction is they weren't solar panels, so to speak. They were the the hot water type tubes.
I think they were solar panels.
Very picky listeners.
Well, now I'm going to have to look this up because, as far as I understand, they were solar panels. They were meant to heat the hot water.
Yes.
At the White House. But you're saying they were not solar panels? They were a different type of solar altogether?
Well, what they have is they have solar thermal hot water. They're just tubes that collect heat that heat water. And that's what these evidently were. They're just big glass tubes that soak in the sun and heat the hot water. They're not actually the photovoltaic kind of solar panels. Just tubes.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that's the case, but I hear you. And if your listener said so, then I'm definitely going to look into it, and we'll make a correction as merited. And of course, I will dock Desi Doyen for the week's pay for having made such an egregious error.
I now hope that the people that contacted me over this are happy now.
Well, I hope so too. And by the way, your listeners, anytime an error comes up like that, or anytime they just want to say, well done, they can feel free to drop us a note, greennews@bradblog.com, or follow us on the Twitters @GreenNewsReport. We love to hear from readers, and we love to make corrections when we have to, when they are merited. So always good to hear from people one way or another on that.
All right, so now I've got a place to go for complaints. If anyone wants to complain, there you go.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, anytime Rick makes a mistake, just feel free to complain to us, and we'll issue the correction for him.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Because I need that, because I don't have
I know you do.
I don't have time to deal with all that. Brad, it's always great talking with you, man. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Rick. Great talking to you. Hope to do it again soon.
All righty. Thanks so much, Brad. Friedman, bradblog.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Still there? All right, thanks.
Come all you good workers, good news to you I'll tell. how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on?
There isn't anyone immune from globalization. In fact, the confluence of greed and geography blends seamlessly over all of humanity. As the American workforce has become more sophisticated and smart, corporations have become less agreeable. Of course, there were numerous road signs that led to globalization, and at this point, somewhat improbable that any single cause could be raised from the economic wreckage it has created. However, 1976 may have been a high watermark for the American economy, where a change in the tax code emboldened corporations to move more operations overseas. Where these gutless entrepreneurs once shuttered factories in the Northeast and moved them to southern localities, they were now served up by the U.S. Congress, a world plate where even to their insatiable greed, the possibilities seemed limitless. The assault on American workers continued in the 1980s when the Reagan administration further retooled the tax code to allow foreign investors to set up American subsidiaries, thereby artfully managing the exodus of U.S.-based corporations. The unseemly alliance between Congress and corporations offers little solace to workers, but does shine a perpetual light on the misgivings of unregulated money flowing into the pockets of greedy politicians. Unions, while greatly weakened over the last 2 decades, continue to mount credible defenses, proposing balance, equity, and fairness for workers over the broader brush of Congress that would have us believe that globalization can regulate itself. This Rick Smith Show Labor History Minute is brought to you by a grant from the Labor Education Center at IUP. For more information, go to www.thericksmithshow.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happy!
Exposing that free trade is never free. The Rick Smith Show.
Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay. Because the $1 Million Man always gets his way.
Oh, yes, the $1 Million Man. Oh, isn't that the truth? I mean, there was just a study done by the people at Northwestern and Princeton where they said, well, yeah, that's true. The $1 Million people always get their way. In fact, they basically said it's over. The nation is already an oligarchy in which, the very well-to-do, with their army of lobbyists and their campaign cash, well, they're in charge. They get what they want. Interesting statement by Danny Roderick in the Social European Journal. They write, it appears that it is now acceptable to talk about inequality in America as a central issue facing the country. And, and I guess now maybe a little bit, because it's been several years of a lot of people really struggling. I think for a while, most people thought, well, things will turn around, the recession will come to an end, things will be better, it'll pick up, we'll be fine. But it really hasn't. And, it was interesting, like Brad said, it was Democrats too, who basically negotiating with themselves ended up with a smaller stimulus and no single payer, which I think most Democrats and some Republicans even see the value in. And it would have, to me, been a smarter policy move It would have been a much easier rollout than this. Even the most ardent supporters of this law can't look at it and go, the rollout was good. Because you had to know. I mean, really, you had to know that if the rollout didn't go well, the Republicans would pounce on you. And they have. I mean, it's been a key issue in a number of elections now. This one being another one of them. And you've got Democrats now running on and it's especially the gubernatorial candidates saying, well, we're going to take the Medicaid expansion money. That's one of the big things. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to push for something better than just this, they're stuck with we'll at least take the money. Just very, very interesting as far as I'm concerned. But tomorrow you got to get out and vote. Really, I mean, Tuesday is such an important day. And there are 4 candidates. And when I come on the air tomorrow night, I will say who I voted for, because by the time I'm on, the polls will have closed. And probably, to be honest, probably by the time I get on at 9 o'clock, I'm hoping it'll be over. The decision will have been called. But hey, you never know. It could be one of those things where, late into the show, we're going, hey, what are the voting totals? Who's winning in this? And part of me says I'd like to see that, but also I would like to see a clear winner. The problem in any 4-person race is you can end up with someone with 26% of the vote being the standard bearer. And that, to me, is why I like instant runoff voting. It gives you the option of going, well, this guy, the polls say this guy, and I really don't want this person over here. So it would give you the option of saying, 2 choices. I can vote my conscience, the person that I really want to see win, and then you go, okay, my second choice would be the person who probably is going to win, but I wanted to have my say. And now you go back to, for Republicans, go back to when Clinton became president. I don't know that Clinton wins if there isn't Ross Perot, and if we have instant runoff voting to make sure that somebody gets to that 50% plus 1. I don't know Clinton wins in 92. I know George Bush doesn't win in 2000. So when you look at it in this way, it cuts both ways. I mean, but it comes down to that one core basic premise that the person who's leading the country should at least have the support of the majority in one way or another. Because we've got some big issues coming up. And what the wealth class of this country, I think, has done masterfully is they've divided us up, sliced and diced, moved us around, keeping us pitted against one another, which is a bad thing. It's a bad thing for democracy. It's a bad thing for governance. It's a bad thing for the future of our nation. And it's a bad thing because we don't get things done. And to me, as I was thinking over the weekend of this train that China wants to build from China to the U.S., I mean, think about the mind that goes in this. Or the Elon Musk, who wanted to put a train under the put everything in tubes, shoot you across the country under a tube. I mean, or into that's thinking big things. And immediately he was set aside. Oh, that's stupid. It's ridiculous. There used to be a time when we would think big thoughts, when we would entertain the idea of big concepts and big projects and pie in the sky, if you will. I don't know, man, I go back and I think about, my conversation today with my daughter, who just amazingly turning into a young woman right before my very eyes. It seems like just yesterday she was just a little girl, with the big eyes, and Daddy, I love. Now she's turning into a young woman and moving on and having thoughts of her own and asking serious questions and being deliberative. And to me, that's exciting. The fact that she's willing to ask questions and to think about things in different ways, to me, is extremely exciting. And I hope all kids in her grade are doing that, because that's how, as a citizenry, we don't get We don't get set aside by all of the nonsense, and we aren't following the shiny thing or the stopwatch going back and forth. But what's frustrating is that I don't know what the future holds for her, and none of us do. But it's one of those things that you really try to go in the direction that you think is best. And can you really look at what's happened the last 12 years, the last 14 years, and say we're heading in the right direction? All the policy, all of the trade laws, everything seems to be going towards the wealth class and Wall Street. Very little comes to Main Street and working people. And that, to me, is what's frustrating. Anyway, quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
Ain't gonna take it, it's our time. We want the world and we want it now. We're gonna take it anyhow. We want the airwaves.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion. In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News, they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, No, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered, knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they were pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Something like it hot, so let's turn up on you till we fry.
I honestly believe everyone in our body is never going to use insider trading to advantage themselves over the best interest of the country.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Could insurance companies, do you think insurance companies can be the savior of the world? Can farmers' insurance save the planet? Is it possible? Do you think it's possible that insurance companies? Do you think? Well, interestingly enough, last month, the people who, we are farmers, evidently they filed a class action lawsuit. In fact, 9 of them, arguing that Chicago, the city of Chicago should have done more, because climate change is coming, that the city of Chicago should have done more to upgrade their sewers, upgrade their storm drains, upgrade their infrastructure to take into account that global warming is happening, and that by not doing so, farmers insurance has suffered losses due to the city's not planning for the future. So by not having adequate sewer and storm drains during one of the huge downpours they had back in April, it cost farmers insurance and other insurance companies a boatload of money because, as the one article I read said, there was sewage, geysers of sewage from basement drains on walls and floors and furniture, and basically just destroying the lower level of people's homes because of this. And farmers had to pay the claims. So farmers they're saying, well, we shouldn't have to pay the claims because you didn't do enough to fix it. And it's an interesting argument because we have to start thinking about the reality that whether you believe it's man-made or it's not, this isn't that argument. This may make us look long and hard at what we are doing to make things worse, but it's interesting to me that the insurance industry is going, hey, climate change is happening, and we don't want to be held responsible for it. We don't want to pay for it. Because I don't think they're going to win this lawsuit. Maybe they will. I don't know. But my gut tells me probably not. But they're laying that long-term groundwork because understand, things are getting worse. And as the one article I read pointed out, that in the 1980s, what you had is, about an average of $50 billion a year due to weather-related losses and damage. Today, that number, over the last decade has been over $200 billion. It's gone up 400%. So in the next decade, what do you think is going to happen? Because nobody's saying that things are turning back the other way. Everyone keeps saying the planet's going to continue to get warmer. These storms are going to, and I don't even know that this is, the severity of more storms. I'm not even really sure what they base these numbers on. They just said global warming, global weather-related losses and damage. But as I'm looking at this, I'm going, are they just laying the groundwork for the future, saying, well, we can get out of our obligations because you didn't. And again, insurance companies are masterful at shifting the blame to somebody else, right? It's someone else's responsibility, not us, because they're in the business of making money and holding on to their money, not paying it out. The idea of an insurance company paying out is a bad thing for them. They wouldn't be in business if they had to do it. So as I'm looking at this, I'm starting to think maybe, possibly, the insurance companies could be the saviors. Now, are we going to pay higher premiums? Oh, you bet your sweet patukas. We're going to be paying higher premiums because they've got to be adjusting their models. When you think about it, how many times have we heard, oh, this happens once every 100 years, or this happens once every 500 years, or this happens once every millennium? Well, they've got to start thinking about, once every 100 years is coming around about once every 10, and then once every 5, and then, once a year. They've got to start adjusting their models. And what does that mean? That means there's got to be more money in the pool. Because you and me, I and the rest of us, we all throw money into a big pot. It's how insurance works. I'm sure we all understand it. So it's, basically what I wanted for healthcare. You throw a bunch of money into the pot, and whatever has to be paid out gets paid out, and whatever's left, that's profit. Pretty simple, right? But the insurance company does a masterful job of going, okay, throw all the money in, some for us, because we got to pay ourselves exorbitant salaries, some for us, some more for us, some more for us. Oh, then we have to pay some claims out, and then the profit for the shareholders. I don't know that the profit for the shareholders goes in that order, but that just seems to be how it plays out. So as these storms get worse, and as we continue to have more really, really difficult storms and more just high magnitude storms, and like the other day, we've lived in our house for a little over 9 years now, and there's a creek that runs right by our development. It's a pretty sizable creek, the Conda de Gwinnett, or as my kids say, can't go in it. We live way up on a hill, so chances are, if it gets to us, someone has already built the ark. But, it's still, and there's a bridge that goes over it that I've never seen the water get as high as it has gotten. And here locally, it just rained for a little bit. It was like the sky opened up, and instead of drops coming out of a pitcher, it was just like somebody dumped the entire pitcher. And I don't ever remember seeing that river, that creek, whatever it is, that high. It was almost to the bottom of the bridge. And I was thinking about it. What happens when it reaches the bridge? What happens when it goes over the bridge? You know, what happens when all of those houses along the river who now are well above where the water is ever gone, what happens when they wash out? And what are those folks, what's their insurance rate? Because they're somewhere near water, and how much more are they going to be charged because of this? Because understand, it's not going to get any better. And for people like me who go, you know what, I don't honestly know if it's man-made global warming or not. And please, my environmental friends, don't yell at me and don't throw all the angry emails. I simply, I've read some of the research. I buy it's possible. And I buy it's possibly just normal change. But where I sit is, if it is possibly done by us, the reasonable response, the common sense response is to move away from what we're doing, right? The idea is that, you know, and if the scientists are correct, if they are, the reasonable response would be, okay, let us stop burning fossil fuels. Let us invest in things that are going to help us be less dependent, because we're never going to stop using fossil fuels. We're not going to stop using coal. Understand, we're just not. And in some conversations I've had about coal, we should be mining it, yes, but we should be using it for other things. And I read an article of all of the things that they can make with coal that you go, why aren't we doing that? Why are we burning it? Because we're stupid? Quite possibly, yes. But for me, this idea of solar panels everywhere just makes sense. You know, I was just talking to a relative who was in from Vegas, and she's a big shot, you know, public official kind of person. And I don't want to say what she does, but because I don't want to get her into trouble for talking to me. But she was saying, you know, she was pushing for a solar panel parking lot, to where the cars would be covered by solar panels. Because she said, you know, to be honest, solar panels should be everywhere. Energy. Hello? We air condition everything. The electric bills are through the roof. Everything could be run off of solar because we get a lot of sun. And it's that kind of sun that, well, it's everywhere. Why not cover all the parking lots so that when you get in your car, one, your car isn't on fire when you get in, and two, you create some energy. Common sense. Moving in the direction of making intelligent choices. You know, my daughter would see, she sees a mall, or she sees, you know, the Walmart store that doesn't have any solar panel. She goes, Dad, why aren't they up there? Why aren't they everywhere? You want to create enough jobs? The manufacturing of enough solar panels to be able to make a store the size of a Walmart or a Target or a Kmart or any of these massive big box retail, you could cover the entire roof of that store, have some batteries in place, and use it as primary daytime electricity. And of course, heating and cooling, especially here in the Northeast. And what does it cost you? It costs you the cost of the cells and the solar panels and the upkeep. Creates jobs. Good idea. Problem is our lawmakers seem to be in the pockets of the special interests in the drilling industry, in the extraction industry. And for all those people who, you know, well, I work in the extraction industry. Well, you know what? Coal's not going away. Gas is not going away. Maybe by saying, you know, as a matter of demographics, as we grow as a globe, that we're, like Jimmy Carter said, we're never going to use as much oil as we did in 1977. Well, that didn't last because we did. The idea at the time was to say, okay, this is the line. We're not going to use any more than this. Everything else that we need extra from this point forward will be from renewables. That to me makes sense. And this idea that maybe, and it's a weird thought, that the insurance industry, that lawyers could be our saviors. Our lawyer, and this is why, you know, again, I'm waiting for the ALEC legislation. I'm waiting for my Republican friends to say, well, you know, we need tort reform so that you can't sue insurance companies. I'm waiting for it so that you give insurance companies the pass. Because I think that's what this lawsuit's really about. It's about trying to figure out where the ground is and how to get out of what's coming. Because, look, we're heading into an era of disaster capitalism. Whoever benefits off of these usually no-bid contracts in emergency situations, there's a lot of money in this. And you look at the aftermath of Katrina, how much money was wasted because, one, we didn't pay prevailing wage, didn't pay minimum wage, tried to do away with all of that because we thought we would get lower bids, but, we didn't bid anything out because it was urgent. We had to hurry up. We had to get this stuff done in a hurry. So we paid the highest bid, not the lowest. So you had no competition. For all of my righties who believe in the market for competition, it's good for you. It didn't have any competition. And by the time you ended up, and I use the example of the trash, evidently, and this is the way I read it. We the taxpayer paid about $47 a ton to have this trash moved away. And by the time it was subcontracted and subcontracted and re-subcontracted and re-subcontracted, the people who actually moved the trash did it for like $3. So all along the recontracting scale were a bunch of people who took finder's fees, I guess, money for just passing it along. It sounds like a con to me, but coming into the future, as we see more of this disaster capitalism happening, as we see more of these storms and things getting worse, because can anybody tell me, if things are getting better? Because I'm not seeing it. As sea levels rise and all of the beachfront property in our country becomes, underwater, what happens to them? What happens to the insurance there? Because this is what I think the insurance company is doing. They're just setting themselves up to go, you know what, we're getting out of it. We're gonna figure out how to get our way out of the whole paying these claim things. So that's how I see it. And at the end of it, what are we doing to stop it? And that's why I think this lawsuit is pretty interesting. It's a fairly interesting lawsuit in that it might actually make us think about, how do we change things? How do we start building in such a way that giant sinkholes aren't going to open up because of too much rain? How do we start thinking about building new sewer lines that we actually think, hey, the water, we're going to have these huge influxes at one time. Engineering-wise, how do we do that? It could be an opportunity to do things right. Or, honestly, it could be an opportunity just to do things as we've done. And you kind of go, wrong, right? So it's one of those opportunities where you stop and you think, how do we do it? I mean, you look at Germany, and we talked about this the other night. They had like 75% of their energy from renewable energy at one point. 75%. Because they put solar panels everywhere. They've got windmills. They've done the geothermal. They've done all of these other things. Why aren't we doing this? I know Obama tried. They gave some money to solar companies, and the Republicans have been losing their mind ever since. But why, as a nation, haven't we been demanding it? I mean, it leaves me curious. It leaves me curious and just kind of, I understand why the politicians, I get that. I get the lobbying end of it, the campaign cash that comes along with it, and this is how we've always done it, Rick. I get that from them. But from average everyday voters who tell me we just need to drill, baby, drill. We need to be drilling so we can put Russia in their place. No, what we need to be doing is we need to be getting out of the game. And this is where that whole free market idea comes from. That abstaining from the game. Let them play the energy game. Let them play this. Why are we in the middle of that game? And I think Germany's trying that. They're trying to be that energy independent country because, they need other people's oil. They need the gas. I mean, you want to know where Russia's money comes from? It comes from Germany. That's who buys the gas from them. And Germany's going, hey, we want to get off of it. It just seems smart to me. And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder why the leaders of this country, and really the thought leaders of our country, aren't pushing this full tilt. But then I think I know. It comes down to the money. It comes down to the profit. Nobody's paying me. I'm not paying anybody for the energy that I'm creating with the solar panels on my house. And that's the problem with it. They haven't figured out how to make cash, how to make a ton of cash off of you and me. Anyway, if you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can always email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Stitcher on the smartphone, all of that, iTunes, all right there. Great having you along for tonight's program. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming like the tide flood beneath the lunar sway. Imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is coming to the USA.
We see the storm out on the horizon. The clouds grow dark in the midnight sky. We feel the fire burning in the belly. The flame leaps out with an angry cry. From the underground where the night is endless. From the mine and rig where our work is done. From every plant and every nation we cry. We are many, we are one. Power, there is power in the union. Power, there is power in our hands. Power, we stand and fight together. There's power in a union of many lands. Power, come and reach across the borders. Power, come and open up your eyes. Power, when we stand and fight together. There's power when we organize. Fight the power of one with the power of many. You fight the power of evil with the power of right. You fight hatred with love. Fight darkness with light. Power, there's